Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome to this wonderful new venture, I guess. Switch over to that as well so you can actually see what I'm doing. How are we doing this afternoon? I mean, it says quiz night. It's night somewhere, but it's afternoon here. So, welcome to this. I don't know if we're going to get into coding straight off the bat, but we're certainly going to be able to get through to Unity. Unity UI stuff and that. So, might not be too much coding to do today, but we'll see how far we get. And yeah, we got to the 500 questions marathon stream target, so that's definitely a thing I've got to get sorted now. Thanks everyone. How are you all doing this afternoon? I hope you had fun with Quizzy Dan and him doing his crossword solving. Hello there to Atogi Milk Like Substance, also with Top 9 Connor, Listwitz, Jerry RS, Cetra, Stoshka, JPB, all people putting Dootcoin towards the community challenge there. Gamma radiation, or sort of radiation in a different way. And Ian Dominic Gaming, and Egg, and Haltatu. And yes, that raiding music there is from Fort Boyard. We did not change the title of it one bit. Physics is fun. We love code. I mean, I do love code, but I don't want to get too bogged down in the code straight off the bat, because there's a lot of stuff to talk about with the Unity UI to start with, so that you get an idea of how it works, because it's a bit finicky if you don't know all the ins and outs of it straight off the bat. May your buzzers be Bobby and your bobs be buzzery. Ah, dear. It was great. Not that you're biased, no. I'm going to be able to think of some more. Yeah, it was weird, very useful experience. All right, Manic. Cool. So, welcome. You did a speed run crossword. Any percent. You did an any percent on a crossword. I don't know if it counts as any percent because you got help from chat. Anyway, welcome to this. I'm not a teacher. So I'm jumping into this completely blind, as it were. I have a rough idea what I will talk about in this stream, but I don't know what the pace of it's going to be like. I don't know how far I'm going to get through with it. I'm hoping that this is going to be a bit of a work along process. So if you can, go to the details that are in the that message, the Unity Workshop message, which basically entails going to my Discord through that link, which takes you directly to the Unity Workshop text channel. And at the top there is a pinned post with everything you need to get started with. Critically here, you'll need Unity version 2021 F1. Basically, any 2020.1 version will work, but the current one they have is 1.2 F1, which should be fine. I probably shouldn't be showing a lot of that, actually, thinking about it, so I'm going to have to consider that in future. And then from that, you'll then also need to get a code editor of some description. I mean, Notepad will work, but it's probably not the best way to do it. So Visual Studio Code, Visual Studio 2019, whatever works for your particular platform, because Unity you can open up on Windows, Mac, or Linux. JetBrains also works. I know a few people use VS Code, it's quite nice. I use VS Professional 2019 because I have a professional license from doing it for work. You'll need an image editor of some description as well, so that we can get some images displayed on screen. So Paint.net, Paint, Photoshop, whatever you have at your disposal. GIMP as well, if you got that, anything like that. And you'll also need to get the basic project that I've provided on Google. Now, if you downloaded that earlier, you might find when you open it up in Unity, which we'll get to in a moment, that it don't work. That there's some compile errors, because I included a script file which I thought would be quite useful, but did not realize it was already part of another package. So it complains with some compile errors if you open up the project from previous. I've recreated the zip, and it's still available from the same link, which is now slightly better. Yeah, it don't work. You either need to re-download, or let's actually go to opening the project. So hopefully if you've got Unity Hub already, then all you want to do is add a project, and then you find wherever you've put it on your machine. So in my case, I've got a programming folder, Unity Workshop, and you just select this top level folder. So you've got these things here that says assets and packages, project settings, user settings. If you don't see library, logs, or obj, don't worry, they get generated when you run it in Unity. So all you need to do is select the folder called Unity Workshop, or whatever you've called it, which is the top level below assets, library, etc. Select that folder. I've already done that. That's what this is here. Can you link to the re-download? It's the same link, but I can chuck it here as well. There you go. You should be able to just download that zip and extract it somewhere, and then it'll appear in Unity Hub here, hopefully listed with the correct Unity version and target platform. So long as it's whatever you're currently using, Windows or Mac or whatever, then that's fine. And then you just click the thing. You can also do that as well, Catnip. If you've got Unity already installed and you opened it through that instead, that doesn't work. That doesn't matter either. Either way works. It basically opens up both ways. Unity Hub is a way of having multiple Unity installs on your machine. Is generally the established way to work. Because there's a couple of people out there, I imagine, that know the struggles of Unity, and that you may need to install many different versions of Unity for different use cases, even for releasing the same game on multiple platforms. So Unity Hub was there as a fix, basically, for providing you a way of having multiple Unity installs, and then your projects open up with the right one. So long as you use 2021, 2 or 3 will be fine. Jack Wilfred on the end, yeah. As long as it's a 2020.1, that'll be absolutely fine. And steps for resolution, if you don't want to re-download, then all you need to do is, once you've opened up the project, you need to go into the Unity UI extensions folder here in the project section, which should appear in the bottom. This is the default layout of Unity. So this is the project view where you see all the assets of your project. You want to go to the Unity UI extensions folder. Then inside of that, go to scripts. Then here there would be a folder called UI Polygon. You would find that file and just delete it, and then all of the compile errors will theoretically go away. Because I did not realize that the current version of Unity UI extensions actually includes that already. I found it as a separate repo and included it thinking, oh, it'd be nice to have some basic Polygon setup in Unity, but it's already included, so it's fine. UI Polygon deleted, done, cool, that should be all fine. So if you open up the console window, which is where all your errors and warnings will come up, which is it's in the same area as the project tab is. Just click to that, click clear, and then if you still have any compile errors, they will still appear. They will still appear as errors, but if you give it a clear and then everything disappears, then you know that all the compile errors have gone away. Where's the file we want to open? It's not a file you open for Unity, it's a folder. So just quickly go through it again. Within the zip. So if I get me that zip, actually just basics. So this is the zip folder here, opened up in WinRAR at the moment. So this folder here, this Unity Workshop folder, is the root project folder. So it would be this one that you open wherever you extract it to. So I drag this folder out and chucked it to here on my documents programming folder. This folder here is the one you want to open in Unity. So that's the one you want to use, is this. This one here is the root of the folder. So basically the one before you see assets packages. Interestingly, you're getting shader errors. Oh, what shader errors are you getting? That's interesting. I'm not expecting that to have happened. Especially you haven't even gotten anything on screen yet. If you do have any problems, I do have the Unity Workshop channel open on Discord, so post any issues you have in there and I'll see if I can help you out along the way with any errors. Anyway, I haven't even talked about how the interface is, so this is the default interface of Unity. Welcome to it. So on the left, shader error in. Oh, those ones. I saw those on a rare occasion. I wouldn't worry about it too much. Unless it's a shader error in distance field UI shiny, failed to open source that. Oh, okay. So that there is. Huh. swear that one got fixed. That's a TextMesh Pro one. I swear that one got fixed. So I did see that, and then I re-imported it, and then it was all fine. What does Package Manager have to say about that? You reloaded Unity, it resolved itself. Okay, well, I guess that's one of those things. You'll get used to this fact that Unity likes to do its own thing sometimes, and closing and reopening it magically fixes things. The common adage of turn it off and on again is quite common. So I wouldn't worry about. Oh, but those that there is yeah. So that one there, Stoshka. All you need to do is go to that path that I mentioned earlier. So from the assets folder, if you go into the Unity UI extensions folder, then go into scripts, somewhere here you would have a file here called uipolygon.cs. Just find that file and then delete it by hitting the delete button or right clicking it and going to delete. When you do that, then hopefully you will have your situation resolved, Stoshka. So yeah, this is the Unity window. On the left is the hierarchy. You basically assumed the first load problem, also assuming I was right. I mean, we'll find out later when we try and add in some TextMesh Pro stuff if it works or not. So on the left is the hierarchy window. This describes everything you see in the scene. So by default there is a main camera, and that's all there is. But once you add new things to the scene, then you'll see it listed in the hierarchy, and it is a hierarchy, so you can place things inside of things, child them up, parent them up, that kind of thing, which is good for your own management of the scene, but also when it comes to UI, it's also good for grouping things together and getting them to draw in the right order as well, because by default in the Unity UI system, it just draws in the order that they are in the hierarchy. There are ways around that, but in the basic sense, you don't need to worry about that. It is just in the order you see in the hierarchy. On the right, can't see much at the moment, it is the inspector. Now, if you select something in the hierarchy, for example, this main camera, then you get to see some information about that thing. So the inspector inspects any object you select. So in this case, we have a main camera which has a transform, which tells it where in the world it is, how it's oriented in the world, and at what size it is in the world, the position, rotation, and scale in 3 dimensions. Now, 3 dimensions, don't worry about that. We're going to work in 2 dimensions when we get to the UI, so this will appear differently when we do the UI stuff, but do bear in mind that the entirety of the engine is actually a 3-dimensional engine, but the UI only deals with X and Y. It sort of does with Z, but again, massive asterisk. Basically, take anything I say with a massive asterisk, because I might be completely glossing over something that to an intermediate or advanced person will go, no, you're wrong. As far as you're aware, you don't need to worry about it. And main camera does have this component. That's what these things are called. They are components. So you add additional components to an object to make them do more things. So this one is a camera. It has some basic settings. We're not going to touch most of these anyway, so don't, again, worry about that. Yeah, the CGP Grey approach, absolutely, yes. So yeah, that's a camera. It describes what kind of perspective it has in the scene. This way you would look from, let's put it that way. For me, the blue isn't full screen in the preview. I have the black sides. The what, sorry? The blue isn't full screen. What blue isn't full screen? I mean this or that. Main camera. So what you will have in your case, Catnip, is you may be in a different size window like this. Yeah. So the camera will always use whatever aspect you currently have configured for the game window, and by default, if we go to the game window here, so dang it, we can change from the scene view to the game view. So the game view is what the camera is seeing right now, and I've skewed this size up so now it looks a bit like a box, a bit like a square. And if you go back to the scene view, the main camera preview there is showing you that blue square with the letterboxes on the side, because that's what the aspect of the camera is currently. So what you'll have is you're working in an environment that's not as widescreen as mine, but it'll always be fixed to a particular aspect. In this case, with the game view is on free aspect, so it just fills in the gap, the entire gap here. We will fix that problem in a moment, Catnip, because it's one of the major problems with trying to do UI, is trying to make it work with multiple aspect ratios, and I'm going to basically say we don't care about that. So the scene view is your working view of the entire scene and does not affect where the camera is positioned, unless of course you have the camera selected and you move that around. Let me quickly pop it back out of 2D view. So this is the 3D world, of the scene. There's your camera there in wonderful world space. You just toggle that between the 2D and 3D mode by clicking the little 2D button at the top of the scene view. To move around in 3D space, hold the middle mouse button down. And you can pan across. You can do all this kind of funky stuff. If you want to rotate your view around the world, hold the right mouse button down and then move around, and you can start moving around in the world. If you want to move the camera in and out like this, then you can use the arrow keys. Arrow key up and arrow key down will allow you to move in and out. Unfortunately, WASD does not work in this regard because they're going to be mapped to different commands. Also, left and right to slide left and right as well, to do that kind of thing. I don't need to scroll, do I? I mean, scroll will scroll in and out to zoom in and out, but you won't need to worry about that because I will tell you about a magical thing you can use to get around for bigger things. So the general movement is use your right mouse to rotate around, use the middle mouse button in to slide around like this, arrow key up and down, left and right to move around the world, and then you can also select objects in the world with the left mouse click. So there we've got a main camera. Let's quickly add a cube to the scene, just so you know what a cube looks like and how to interact with the scene view. So there's a couple of ways you can do this actually. You can go to the game object menu at the top, and then go to 3D object, and then click cube. And if you do that, then it spawns a cube in the center of where you are looking in the scene at the moment. So if you were looking over this way and you did game object, 3D object, cube, it creates a cube in exactly that center position. It guesses what you're looking at in the depth and just figures out a certain distance away. So you'll find if you look at the position information, it's only barely above the ground. The Y is the up-down motion, and it is placed there. It's a default cube. It is indeed a default cube, Tantasar, yes. Million pound cube. I mean, you just basically create as many cubes as you want at this point in time. So yeah, move around and use the left mouse to select a cube, and then you might see this transform thing. These three arrows. You might also see it just as that, or you might see that, or that. So up here in the top left are all the different operations you can apply to an object in the world. So this one at the moment that we're on, the hand on the left, the hand tool, that there is just moving around. So you can in fact use the left mouse button just to pan around like you would do by using just the middle mouse button in normal mode, in any other mode. So you can move around. Next one along is the move tool, and this gives you these three arrows that allow you to then move the object around in the 3D world. So here we have the red axis. Here is your x-axis. So try and orient the camera to make it a bit obvious. So red arrow is the x-axis, so you can move it along that axis. Green arrow is your y-axis, your up and down motion. And then Z, your blue axis, which moves it in and out. And you can also select multiple axes at once as well. So you see these squares in the middle? Like if I select this blue square here, that means I'm moving it in the X and Y directions at the same time. Or if I select this one here, this green square, then I'm moving it in the X and Z, but keeping the Y the same, and things like that. So you don't need to worry about the 3 dimensions because we're going to simplify it with 2D, but that's just the basic motions that you can do. You can also then rotate an object, and you get this funky gizmo that allows you to rotate an object. So if you hover over one of the lines, and you can now rotate an object around its center, a bit like that, and you just put it into whatever orientation you feel like that. Then there's the scale tool, which I've rotated it in all sorts of directions. So the axes are all a bit of a mess, but you can undo. Don't worry, if you make a mistake, you can always undo. Standard undo command will get you back a command at a time. This is the scale tool that allows you to scale the object in certain directions. So if I want to scale it in the X direction, then I can do that. If I want to scale it in the Y, I can do that. If I want to scale it in the Z, I can do that. And if I want to scale it in all at the same time, then hit the cube in the middle and scale way, make it nice and big or nice and small, however you would like. The next one along is called the Rect tool. Now this one is more geared towards UI. It does magically work in 3D, although it really shouldn't do. But this is what you'll be using a lot of when we use the Unity UI 2D setup. It allows you to select corners and also specify anchor positions, but we'll get to that later. The next one along is basically a multi-tool. Allows you to do position, rotation, and scale all in one go. So you can do all the operations in one go, apart from doing individual scales. You can do scale on all axes at the same time, and you can move in individual axes, and they can rotate in individual axes, but they can't scale all the axes at the same time. Multiple ways to screw it up, absolutely quiz down. The majority of the time when I'm using this scene view is I'm using the move tool, and then I'll swap to rotate if I need to. Coincidentally, there are keyboard commands for these, so I don't use them myself. So in fact, these are actually mapped to QWERTY at the top. So your Q is your your hand tool, W is your move tool, E is your rotate tool, R is the scale tool, T is the rect tool, Y is the multi-tool. And then there is advanced available custom editor tools, but you don't need to worry about that. So QWERTY is mapped to those 6 buttons in the top left, which I guess sort of makes sense that the top left of your keyboard is mapped to the top left of the editor. So I'm going to put it back into move mode or translate mode. That's the word I'm looking for, is translate. Is there a nice reset to default orientation control or fancy locking to angles controls? So if you want to rotate and lock it to certain units, then you can hold the control key while doing the rotation, and as you can see, it's locking it here to 15-degree intervals at a time, I believe. So you can do a nice simple 90-degree snap there like that, or like that. Alternatively, we can look at the transform section here, and if you want to just dial a number in, so say I want to rotate it by 75 degrees in Y, I can just go to that, select 75 degrees on Y, and it's done. So you don't even need to worry about manually trying to slide it into place. If you know the exact number you want, then just chuck it in here and you're all good. And if you really have messed it all up and you can't be bothered to undo all the way, now on this transform component, if you look, there's a triple dot symbol in the sort of the top right of it on that header. If you click on that and then click on reset, it resets all of the values to their original defaults. So in this case is 000, 000, and 111. So it returns it back to the origin of the world at origin scale, and you're back to a regular cube. So always worth remembering that if you do mess things up, then there is that reset command there to take you all the way back to the beginning. I think that's all you need to know for the time being with the transform tools. There is a toggle grid snapping here as well. when you are on the global mode, although I tend not to use that. I would just tend to just dial in the number manually myself if I know that I want it to be 4 units across, rather than having it snap and then... Although actually moving with snap is quite nice like that. So you can have the grid snap mode on there as well to snap it to unit motion rather than fractional motion. It's not working how I imagine I see now. Oh, okay. Is that all making sense for everyone so far? For basic motion, how to use the scene view, how to add an object to the scene and move it about. Does that all make sense? Snap thingy, so along this top row here, right at the end, there's this little magnet symbol with a grid. If you click that, it goes a slightly lighter colour of grey. That means it's now active, and then with snap on, then when you use things like the move tool, it will snap it to units on the grid. So these are all unit movements rather than fractional unit movements. I tend not to use it because if I want to move it to a specific unit, I can just chuck the number in here. So I want it to Z10, I just chuck the number in here at Z10, and that does the same for me. But if you want to use locked motion like that, that's no problem. It basically does, when you move things, you move it in... it will always move it in unit increments. Even if you scale the world up like this, I think... it still locks it to individual unit motion, even though this grid that you see now is much larger. It's actually 1,000 unit interval. It still locks it to just single unit interval. So no matter how large your world is, it's still going to be just to the nearest integer rather than whatever the nearest grid increment is. Yes, it will be a VOD. Don't worry, Buzzerbob. It will definitely be a VOD after the fact. I have it locally recording, and I'll also hopefully have it just finish the video on Twitch. So don't worry about that. Yes, there will indeed be a VOD. Oh yeah, and if you're trying to develop something that is trying to match a real world situation, then from the outset decide what your quote unquote unit is. In most cases, when I work for our sports simulation games, we tend to go with 1 meter equals 1 unit, so then everything is just in meter scale. But we have in the past done it at yard scale, which was a really weird one, but it made sense for the game because everything was imperial measures anyway rather than metric measure. So entirely your decision, but for UI, your units will be in canvas space units. So we'll get to that in a moment when we get to actually creating a new canvas. Yeah, the canvas units, which you think maybe this should be pixels. No, the canvas units, it's a slightly different thing. Well, if I want to use the absolute unit, I mean, that's entirely your decision. Yeah. Anything else before we move on? Do you open something in your folder or start a new project? So just quickly go over. If you have Unity Hub installed, then open up Unity Hub, and then you'll be able to add a project to Unity Hub. You then find where you've extracted your Unity Workshop folder, and the folder you'll need to select is the one that holds the folders as assets, packages, project settings, and user settings. So select that particular folder, select folder, and then it'll appear in this project list as Unity Workshop, and then you'll be able to open it up. Yeah, you do need to unzip it. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, I think we can move on into the 2D world. So, simple operation to get rid of objects that you don't want. Select the objects in the hierarchy, or you can do it in the real world. And to multi-select, you can hold Shift and then select multiple things. Or you can hold Control, that works as well. Or you can also box select, so drag a box open over the things you want to select as well. Select all the things, they'll glow up like this, and then just hit delete and they go away. Just hit delete and they'll all go away. Alternatively, you can also you can't right click in the game view, okay, but you can go edit, then delete to delete them from the scene view. And yes, you can undo to undo any deletes that you make. Okay, let's go into 2D then. So, top of the scene view, we have 2D. Click the 2D button, and now this camera, your scene view, will now get trapped into the 2D world, as it were. So what you're seeing now is a 2D projection of the world rather than a 3D projection. It uses, I would probably delete the cubes because we're not going to be needing them for a while because you're done. So you may as well delete the cubes. Although you can keep them around if you want. It's entirely your decision. Goodbye, cubes. As I say, you could always reintroduce the cubes again by adding a cube, just like that. There you go. Ah, I missed you, cube. I missed you so much. Bye. So you can have 3D objects in a 2D world, that is no problem, but they get projected into 2D space using, for those that know the mathematical term, is an orthographic projection. So it uses an orthographic projection. For those that don't know what that word means, don't worry. It just means it basically completely compresses the third dimension into a single plane. So you don't actually see any depth. Goodbye cubes, no bad cubes. Literally a companion cube. Well, we can do that as well. Okay. Stupid Unity still installed. It does take a while, Itogi. Sorry about that, but it does take a little while. I wish I could compress my third dimension. Okay, so let's get going with the UI. So the first thing you will need for anything that uses the Unity UI system is to start off with a canvas. So you can go to Game Object, UI, Canvas, and that will create a canvas for you. Alternatively, you can also right-click in the hierarchy window, go to UI, and then go to Canvas. And a canvas that's your first portal call for everything UI. Anything you want in your UI to appear on screen has to exist in a canvas for it to work properly. So basically, the first thing you'll ever do is just put in a canvas. And you'll see it's quite large. You'll see it's very large. You'll see it's massive in comparison to what we were just working with, because we were working in, simple, basic single units over here in this little world. But this canvas, it's massive because it's working in pixel units. So every pixel on this game view is 1 unit. So you think of the number of pixels here, it's absolutely massive. So how do we get to this point where, like, scrolling is difficult? How do we make it so we can see the canvas really easily without having to scroll in and out all the time? Well, what we could do is select the canvas, and then if you hit F, just like that, you have focused on the object and it has fixed it into the center of your scene view and put it at a reasonable scale so that you can see all of it. So you can focus on any object you want in the world by just selecting it and then pressing F to focus. So we can go from main camera to canvas to wherever we want. You'll also notice that when we added the canvas, we also added this thing called the event system. Now, the event system, you'll never need to touch it ever again, but it does need to be there. The reason for that event system being there is to be able to pass in the interactions that you do to the game via touch or via keyboard. So the event system is there to say, I have clicked here, do me a thing please. And the event system goes, right, I'll do you a thing, and send off the relevant events to whoever needs to know about it. So the event system, you'll never need to worry about it, but it must be there. If the event system is not there in your scene, then your buttons and things like that will just not work. So make certain that it is there. If it isn't, you can add it yourself. You can go UI event system and add it, but by default when you add the canvas it should have added the event system anyway. So you may as well just leave that there. You'll never need to touch it again unless for some reason you wanted to change these values, which I don't think you do. So the canvas, this is the first port of call then. The canvas is where you will work in for making UI. Now, this component here, the canvas here, it said render mode screen space overlay. For the time being, you can leave that as is. All this is saying is that this canvas is overlaying whatever is in the world, and it uses the entire screen to render with. There are other options there, so you can do screen space camera, which uses a specific camera in the scene. You don't need to worry about that. And there is also world space, so if you wanted to have canvases that exist in the 3D world, then you can do it that way. But for the time being, for a simple 2D project, just leave it on screen space overlay for now. And you can leave these other options as well as they are. Target display just says we're using display 1. Unity can support up to 8 displays if you're interested in multi-display systems. But again, simplifying, we're just going to leave it on display 1. Canvas scaler. So this is where we're going to start kind of cheating. Because this is the stuff, this is the thing I will always change to start with my game show things. I always set this to scale with screen size, which then will ask you for a reference resolution. Now, this will depend on your particular environment, your particular monitor setup, but for me, I use 1080p monitors, so I tend to set this as a reference resolution to 1920 by 1080. So now the canvas will be locked to that reference resolution of 1920 by 1080, or at least it will try to lock it to that size. I will talk about that in a little bit. So my monitors, I want them to be 1920 1080, so I'm using 1920 by 1080 for my canvas scale so that I am using pixel coordinate space on my monitors. That's the simplest way for me. And then for this match width and height, this is to try and match the canvas size to what your monitor is actually doing, or more specifically, what your game view is currently doing. So you'll see this game view here, I can keep messing around with the size and it's still in free aspect, but it'll still try and make it a 1920 by 1080 canvas in a way. It's weird. It will try and match it the best it can, but again, here is another thing I do to sidestep the issue, is I change my game aspect to 1920 by 1080. So now the two completely match, there's no problem. And this is what I do with my game shows. I basically just ignore the problem. Just say, go away problem. I don't need to worry about you for now. Obviously, it will be a problem if ever I would want to release this game in a different aspect ratio other than sort of standard widescreen 16:9. But that's not a concern of mine at the moment because I'm only hosting it in my own environment. So what I do is set the canvas scale with screen size mode to the reference resolution that I want. And then, but broadcast resolution, I mean, if you want to do broadcast resolution, then by all means, plug in a broadcast resolution here and a broadcast resolution here. It's entirely your decision. But for me, I go 1920 1080, and then I fix my aspect on my game view to 1920 by 1080. If yours isn't listing here, then you can add a new one. If you click the little plus at the bottom, it'll ask you to add a new resolution, and you can have either a fixed resolution, which is a fixed number of pixels, or you can go with a aspect ratio as well. So if you're just going in generic 4:3 or 16:9 or 2.12:1 or whatever you want to do, then you can also just do a generic aspect ratio, and it will clamp this game view to that aspect ratio. So those are the two little steps there that I use as a trick for my broadcast, so that I don't have to worry about any problems with them, because there are problems with them, which we'll see later if I were to turn them on. I'm going to take a sip of water. Your main cam, yeah, I still have those. I have those black borders here as well. Like if I really shrink this in, now I get black borders at the top and bottom. If I pull it out, I get black borders left and right. That is correct, Catnip, because what it's doing is it's forcing that view, that camera view, to be at this aspect. So outside of that aspect, it just goes, well, I don't need to worry about it, so we'll just render darkness. So that is entirely correct. The bit of me that's had to debug UIs at different resolutions is seething at the simple sneaky workaround. Ah, sorry. Now, obviously, if you were to distribute what you're doing, you would need to consider the fact that it could run on different resolution monitors and things like that. At which point, then my little fix here won't work for you, I'm afraid. Debuggers hate this simple trick. You won't believe what he said on point number 4. So that's my little trick. And then the other thing is this graphic raycaster. Don't worry, that needs to be there. A raycaster is, well, it casts rays, basically, is the simple thing. If you don't know what those are, they're infinitesimally small sort of vector rays that project from the view, from the camera, into the world. And this graphic raycaster is here so that it basically collides with those raycasts. So this mouse here that I'm moving around, if I click, it will do a raycast check where my mouse is and try and figure out what has been clicked. So with different camera views, then it will need the raycaster to know how to deal with that scenario. So don't need to worry about what that is, but it needs to be there, otherwise things will not work. If you were to remove that component, then things will go wrong for you because it will not be able to interact with the world. What quiz show am I doing? We'll get to that later on. It casts rays, but do you get the right one, baby? Yeah. So how much it took us to fill with just a simple cube. I cannot find that. It's all just the thing with this is just getting over the initial hurdle. Once you're over the initial hurdle and you know what to do, then it becomes a lot easier and it just becomes a second nature. But it's just getting over that first hurdle that is the problem. So we have a canvas. There's not much going on. We see a blue sky here. That's courtesy of this main camera's background color. So if you want to change the current background color, then by all means click on the main camera and just change the background color. Just change it to whatever you want. So if you want it to be a white background or a black background or a blue background or an orange background or a green background or a purple background, then you can change the background color. I tend to use black colors for the background because then everything gets added on top. But it's entirely your decision. I'm going to leave it on a bluish colour just so that we know that background is the world background. Hello, Ben. Welcome. Welcome. Purple colour, best colour. Well, entirely your decision what colour you want to do. Okay. We need to add our first image into this world, do we not? So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to the scene view. We're going to focus the canvas so we know where we are in the world. As you can see now that we've done this fix, that this canvas is now exactly 1920 by 1080 in size as well. On this rect transform. Slightly different to a transform, it is a rect transform, which is why we're using this rect tool, which is on the T. It's on the T on the keyboard. Allows you to specify rectangles rather than just a singular point. Now you can try resizing this, but it's not going to do anything because its size is controlled, as it says some values are driven by canvas. So it's actually being driven by this component here and also this component here. So you can try resizing it, but it's not going to do anything because it's already being controlled elsewhere. Let's add an image into this world. So with the canvas selected in your hierarchy, or either in the scene view as well, either or will work because it's selected in both places. You can then right click on the canvas, go to UI, go to image, or if you don't want to do it that way, you can also go game object, UI, image. And that creates an image inside of the canvas. As you can see now it's been parented into the canvas because it's one step in tabbed, and also we have this little triangle here indicating that we can show and hide the children of this object. And it's put it in the center of my camera view, which seems to be slightly offset from the center of this world. And you can move this thing around. So if you select somewhere in the white of this square, then you can start moving it around your scene view like this. If you want to size the rectangle, then you can drag an edge out like that, or you can drag a corner out and do that, and you just move it around. How do we get to add the image? So let's just start that again. So with the canvas selected, either hierarchy or in the game view, either scene view, either or will work. then you can right click on the canvas, UI image, or you can go game object, UI image. Either or will work, and it adds an image as a child of the canvas object. And by default, it is just a square white graphic because it does not have any sprite information. And you can resize it with the rectangle handles like that, and then just move it around like this. Now you'll also see these wonderful little things here in the middle of the canvas. So these are anchor points. And so I've moved this over here. If you start, actually it doesn't in this mode. I keep forgetting in a different mode it does work. So I can start moving these around, but they don't really do anything. What are these anchor points for? So they are for anchoring this particular image in a specific location relative to its parent. So if I were to, for example, set the anchors to, let's try that again, set the anchors to here, and then if I were to go to the rect transform and reset all these numbers to 0, then you'll see that the rect will then pin itself to those anchor points. And you think, what was that all for? Why are you doing that? Now, anchor points really are only there for dealing with canvas rescaling, which I have obviously completely messed up by forcing the resolution of this to be the same as the what I want it to be. So they don't really do much. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break it. I'm going to turn myself back into free aspect and start breaking things. You will just need to watch along with what's going on. So let's say I have done that and I've put that there and there. Now, what happens if I start changing the game view? You see it's starting to screw the size up of that box a bit. Like that. So if we go back to the scene view and focus on the focus on that image. So these anchor points are relative positions from the left, right, top and bottom of the parent. So at the moment, this is anchored to basically 53% and 79% of the way across. So 52% and 78% along the x-axis, along your left and right axis. And then it's anchored to nearly 19% and nearly 78% on the y-axis, going from the bottom up to the top. That is the thing to worry about with Unity UI and the y-axis. It goes from the bottom upwards. It doesn't go in the order you would think in sort of normal reading order, which would be down. No, it goes up from the bottom upwards. Very much like a math graph, yes indeed. So these anchor points are relative points on the previous, the relative positions. So if I were to change this now, so now this edge of the image is outside of the bound of this anchor. What's that going to do? Okay, well it's still resizing it, but there's still this extra edge over the top, which is actually still the same amount, if I'm right. So that's still 272. Yeah, this value here is still 272 over from the right-hand edge. So what you can do is you can have relative positioning using the anchors, but then you can have absolute positioning inside of or outside of those anchors. So if I wanted my object to be pinned to the right-hand side of the screen, like that, and you know what, let's do that as well. Let's make it like that. So that's there, is this image is now pinned to the right hand side of the screen. So no matter what I do, it's going to be to the right hand side of the screen, but it's only ever going to be this ratio of the full screen width. But if I wanted it to also be exactly 20 units off the top and bottom, and let's say 20 off of the right hand side, then I can do that as well. So what it'll do now is it'll keep resizing it, and it'll keep that 20 pixels offset. Now you'll see it's kind of screwing it up a bit. It's not quite the right size each time. It is shrinking it. That's because the canvas scaler is getting in the way and trying its best to make the scale work. So it's changing the dimensions, but this absolute offset is still working and still remaining the same. The anchors are very weird things to get hold of, but what you can do is use them to make it a bit easier to lay out your UI. So if you wanted something to fill the entire screen, then you could drag the anchors out to fill the entire object like that, and then you can make this fill the entire way like that. So they map to the anchors and they'll always fill that space. I mean, you could do that without the anchors as well. So the anchors could be like this. Well, actually no. In fact, let me just try it. Let me just try a random assortment of anchors. So if I did that and I left the positioning of this box here, what does that do? Yeah, you see, that screws it up. That that's an example of I've screwed up with the anchors and now it's not doing the right thing because it's not keeping it to the full size of the screen. So I've set the anchor point to just some old point on the screen, but these positions, these edges of the rectangle, are going to always try to be some absolute distance away from this relative anchor point. So as I'm changing the size, it's still going to try and fit this size, but now the aspect ratio here is it's much taller than it is wider, so it actually makes this rectangle smaller than the entire screen. However, if I put the anchors back to where they were, back at the top and bottom, and do it, now this object here is always across the left side and is always fitting about this distance. I don't know what the best way, I don't know what the right way of describing it is. It's so very difficult to describe how anchors work. But yeah, it's the anchors are there to express position in the parent, and then the absolute position inside of that is where you actually want it to be in the world. So your rectangle doesn't even get squeezed in like yours. Well, that's because, let's say I am expressing this, I'm changing my aspect ratio of the game. I've gone into free aspect to demonstrate the problem. You'll still be in 1920 by 1080, which won't have that problem. I was demonstrating the issue of what you would do if you had anchoring problems. You don't need to worry about that if you're on a fixed resolution. Which is to say, it kind of defeats the purpose of anchors in most regards, but they are still useful in some places. Yeah, if you're in fixed 1920 by 1080 and also on canvas scaling 1920 1080, the anchors seem to do absolutely nothing. But they are still useful because you could go, right, I want this to be 20% wide on this side of the screen. So my anchors are set to 0 and 0.2 on the X, and they're set to 0 and 1 to fill that entire side. Then I zero everything else out so that it maps to those corners, and you can just say, well, this is now exactly 20% wide on this screen. Similarly, if I want it to be exactly 10% high, let's say 10% high, then I can go up here and I can go from 0.9, so 90% of the way up, to 1, which is 100% of the way up. And again, zero everything out on here. They'll get pinned to those corners of those anchors, and then now that is now 10% from the top. So, like, in case you wanted a panel that comes out from the side, like in Ben's WT BAM game, yeah, that's a simple case that I can come up with. There are other cases. So, if, for example, you wanted something that was in the center of the screen, and you wanted it to be, let's just put the anchor at 0.5, 0.5, 0.5, 0.5. Let's just do that. And as you can see, now that we've changed how the anchors work here, these numbers here have changed as well. That's because this anchor point is now a single point rather than a length or an area. So now you're expressing your distances based off of it being just a singular anchor point. So if you want something that is, 600 by 200 high, but center aligned to the entire thing, then you can say, okay, give me an anchor at half, 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 so 50% in all dimensions, and then set your X and Y position to be 0 from that, so there's no additional movement from that point, and then just set the width and height in pixels to whatever you want it to be. So that there is a 600 by 200 box in 1920 by 1080. They work like horizontal vertical guides in Photoshop to structurize images. I guess you could also say it works like that as well, yeah. Centering is everything 50%. Yeah. Similarly, if you want to, in a sort of rule of thirds, you wanted this to be in the left third of the screen, then you could just change your X positions to 0.3333 and reset your position X. And now that is centered on that first third, as it were. So actually, it's not really in thirds, it's centered on the first third line. Are anchors set per image? Well, anchors are set per any object you have in the canvas. That's the thing you'll need to worry about, is that they are set in every object. However, as you add more objects inside of each other, your anchor points are always relative to its parent, not to the overall canvas, but it is to the most closest parent. So if I were to change this image's color, which I can do on the image side here, and just set it to a goldish kind of color, then I can add an image to this. So let's add another image inside this image, and now it's created an image here, and it can now be anchored to this image. So if I was to set this to be 0, 1, 0, 1, and zero that out, now that is filling that entire image. So if I wanted this white bar to be, let's say, bottom edge for 20% of the height, then you can do that. So this image, this second image now that I've created, is a child of the first, and is now being anchored to the lower 20% of the first one. So if I was to now resize this first one, and just move it around like this, as you can see, it's relatively changing. Well, it's changing the height of it, but it is keeping it so that it's still 20% of its parent size. So you can have things like that. So you can have objects that are fluidly sized. Alternatively, if you didn't want it to be 20%, but you wanted it to be just a fixed height, this is where it is different. If you wanted it to be a fixed height, if you fix the Y anchors to be the same at 0, so you're fixing it to the bottom edge of the object, but I want it to be 60 high, let's say. So 60 high, and move the position up to 30, which is its center point. We'll talk about pivot in a moment. Then, as I resize this image, it's going to keep that bar at 30 high, rather than a relative size. So no matter what size I set this parent at, it'll still keep that initial bar at 30 high. So that's the difference there between the sort of the relative anchor positioning and the absolute size positioning. So if you want something to be an absolute size all the time, then you use absolute size. If you want something to be a relative size, then you use anchoring. But you still need to use the anchoring to know where it needs to size to. Because if I were to now change the anchors to the top, but keep this at the bottom, and then resize it, well, it's going to do weird things. It's going to do very weird things, as you can see. Because this is still wanting to be that distance away from that anchored edge. So that's why it's not moving. But this is exactly what I've defined it to do. That is exactly what I've defined it to do. I've said that this is anchored to the top edge, which I'm not moving. I'm not moving that top edge. So it's some distance away from that edge. And I then have some height to it. So no matter what I do, because I'm not moving this top edge, it will stay like that. Oh! Thank you very much for the 6-month resub there, Theory again. Greatly appreciated. Hopefully that audio alert played out okay. But if I were to move this up, then it's going to follow it. And if I move this edge up, then as you can see, it's now coming in and out. But, like I say, it's still anchored to this top edge by a certain distance. So this is exactly as I had defined it. It looks trippy. It really does look trippy, but that is how it got anchored. So you do need to worry about anchors. And what I will say is it's worth experimenting with them because they are pretty special. And I think what you'll need to do is just get your hands on, tweak some numbers, and see what it does. There are some. Can image be an actual image instead of a color? Yes, let's do that. Let's get yourself an actual image. So find yourself some image. I'm going to go to this site, which is a free page, gameicons.net. They provide a load of icons for free under the Creative Commons by 3.0 license. So let's find a thing. Let's go for that dog, Labrador head. Let's go for that, and we will. All right, so you're going to catch the ball Theory game. No worries. We'll catch you later. So I'm going to download this as a PNG. Yay, dodge. So to drop that in as an asset to your game, go to the assets folder in your project. And then you'll find that I've created for you an underscore game folder. Now, there is no reason for that name being like that. You can have whatever name you want in here. Not a shortcut, though. You can have whatever name you want. Whatever name you want. Whatever works for you, so long as it is in the assets folder. However, there is a reason I gave it this name. Underscore is so that it always appears on top in alphabetical order, and then game because it is specifically game assets. So this is just what I tend to use now these days, is we use an underscore game because it then appears at the top ahead of everything else that you may have as assets in your project, and game because it is game. So underscore game, and then let's just drop the graphic in there, labradorhead.png. I've just dropped into there. So if we come back into Unity, and if we go to the special, shouldn't have done that. If we go to the project tab at the bottom, and let's find our way to those assets. So click on assets, go into game, double click on game, or you can click on game in the tree here. Then you'll see we've got Labrador head. Hey. So that is a sprite. And then what we can do is, if we select one of our images, and then we change the sprite of that image. So on this image component, there's a source image, which is currently pointed to no sprite. So if you click this little circle at the end, it's sort of an asset picker. And I can't remember the official term for it, but it's an asset picker type thing. Then it'll list you all the assets that can fit that particular property. So if we click the Labrador, then we can see that it's now there. It's a bit squished because it's filling that entire box that we've set. Now, if we didn't want it to fill that entire space, then we can change it so it uses a preserve aspect. So if we click on preserve aspect, then it'll always keep the aspect of the original image in consideration and just fit the image as best it can inside of the rectangle that we defined. So no matter what size I set this rectangle to be, it makes that dog that as best it can at the aspect that the image is. If you don't want to worry about aspect, then don't worry about aspect. You can just do that and just scale around. You can try and flip it, but you'll see it don't quite work when you do it the other way around and make the size a bit too make the size the wrong size. It gives you X's. So try and keep it the right size. I think if you want to flip it though, you can change the scale in one of the dimensions to negative. But in this case, it doesn't matter because it's a symmetrical image anyway. It is a symmetrical image anyway, so you don't need to worry about that in this case. So there you go, you got an image there that you can work with. So find whatever images you want, drop them into your game folder, and then start associating them. And you can change the color. So this is it's a tint color. It will multiply with whatever color you have in that particular graphic. So if you want it to be a blue dog, there you go, there's a blue dog. Although it's Clifford's the big red dog, isn't he? So it should be a red dog anyway. There you go. An equilateral good boy, absolutely. Preserve aspect, yep, that thing is there. Did you not know about that one, Ben? Did you not know about preserve aspect? You see, even though Ben has done how many shows now, how many different things on Unity, that little tick box there, that little tick box there allows you to preserve the aspect of the image. Okay, so that's all well and good for simple graphics and that like that. What if we want to make like a box with a graphic, but it wants to stretch and shrink the box? So let me create a image for that. So let's create a 128 by 128 image graphic. I will drop this into Unity Workshop when I'm done with it, so that you can use this particular graphic if you want, if you're not particularly au fait with generating your own. We're going to give this, we're just going to do very basic settings on this, so we're going to go that and that. We'll do those settings. And then let's create a box out of it. Nope, that's not a box. Oh, that's a gradient. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to do a... Actually, that's probably okay. If we do that, something like that. And then... No, that's not right. I keep forgetting how Photoshop works. Those that are more familiar with Photoshop are now cringing. If we quickly generate a bevel on it, and let's make the bevel really deep and strong, like that, I guess, and something like that. All right, no worries, Catnip. Hopefully we'll get to some point later on which is a bit more useful. So we just create a simple graphic like this. Save. So this is going to be for a box of indeterminate size. Let's put it that way. We'll create PNG, and we're going to put this PNG into that folder. So we go to Unity Workshop, Assets, Game, and we're going to call this a box. It's a box. It's a box. It's a box. Oh, is it 9 slice time? Tantasar is 2 steps ahead of me. He's 2 steps ahead of me. So, let's create a new image. You know, in fact, we can make it this second image at the bottom. Oh, by the way, haven't even mentioned it, which is probably going to be very useful. You can rename these things so they're not just called image. So, to do that, you can either go to the inspector at the top here, is the name. You just click on that and go, my dog. There you go. That object is now called my dog. So you can do that. Alternatively, you can also select the object in the hierarchy and press the standard F2 key for Windows to do rename. Whatever it is on other platforms, you can also press the appropriate rename shortcut to do that. And go, my dog is, and let's rename this other one as a bar. She's asleep. It's fine. She's asleep. Don't need to worry about it. Okay, and let's associate this new graphic. Now, I did say you can pick this, so you can go click the circle icon and then find the asset. But you can also drag from place to place. So from the project view, you can go and drag the asset you want, and then drop it in. It will go blue on the property if it'll accept it, and then you just let go, and it drops it in. Now, that's okay, I guess, but it looks a bit squished, doesn't it? Because it's trying to fill the space up with the original size. And preserve aspect's no good either because it's not the right size. So we want to 9-slice this. Now, by default, you put sliced mode on for 9-slicing, which we'll talk about in a moment. It says it doesn't have a border because we've not defined the borders yet. So let's put it back to simple. Let's go back to the sprite itself. So find that box graphic you may have generated. I need to give you that box graphic. I said I was going to, so have a box graphic. There you go. There is a box graphic in Unity Workshop if you want the box graphic. Once you have that in your assets, you then need to look at the inspector by selecting it. Select the asset, and it'll come up with the inspector with the asset settings. So it tells you it's a texture. It tells you it's a single sprite. So this is for animating cases. So if you do animated sprites in Photoshop or something like that, and they're individual frames, then you can do that. But in this case, it's just a single frame. And then we go to this thing called the sprite editor to edit the sprite. So if you click that, you'll get this new window appear. And this new window is just the sprite. Now, 9-slicing. 9-slicing is what we're talking about here. This is where we're going to be splitting the graphic into 9 different grid locations, as it were. So what it does, it will define different areas of the sprite that could be used for different purposes. So along the top edge, you can see here we've got sort of like 3 zones. We've got the corner zone, we've got the top edge zone, and then we've got the top right corner zone. Similarly, along the left edge, we've got the top left corner zone, we've got the left edge, and the bottom left corner zone. So in total here, we've got 9 zones. We've got corner, edge, the main content, edge, and corner, edge, corner. So let's 9-slice that. How do I go to sprite editor? So let's do that again. So select the asset in _game or wherever you put it in your assets, and then you'll see on the inspector on the right hand side by default in the default layout. You then click on the button here that says sprite editor. Click that and you'll get a new window, and you may have to resize the window out or press the maximize button to make it a bit more obvious. That's where the sprite editor is. If that is okay, can you find that all right? Let me know if you can't find that okay. Quizdan's not seen that. Okay. If you select this asset, does it say sprite 2D and UI here, Quizdan? So it does say that, okay. And then a bit further down, cool, you're all there. Because there is a thing, if for some reason when you drop it in it says only default, then you won't see the sprite editor button as you see here. But if it knows it's a sprite already, then it allows you to be the ability to edit the sprite. Okay, so here again. So now let's define these different areas of our sprite for the 9-slicing. So we just need to do this by dragging the 4 different edges in. So let's drag the first edge into there, let's say. And then drag the bottom edge into about there. Drag the right edge into about there. And drag the left edge to about there. So we've now defined our 9 zones of our sprite. This is the 9-slicing. So we've got the corners, we've got the edges, and we've got the main content. So you think just editing that would be done? No, you have to hit the apply button in here. So whenever you do anything in the sprite editor, always make certain you go up to the apply button, which is, it's not really that obvious where it is because you've got this window at the bottom here and you've got everything else. But yeah, if you hit apply, let it do its little spinning thing, and then it goes grey. That means it has applied those changes. Then you can close the window and you're okay. Now, this is not changed yet because it's still using the simple image type, but if we go to the image component and now change it to sliced, oh, look at that. Look at that. Now those borders are on the edges as we expect, and then we have the main content which is being stretched to fit that area. So now whatever size I make this box, make it this size, I make it this size, make it this size, make it whatever size I want. Those borders are always going to be the right size for it, and then the gap in the middle will always fit. Now, alternatively, you don't have to have the centered filled. So if you only have a border graphic and you don't want to worry about the content in the middle, then you can turn the content in the middle off if you're only worried about the borders. So you can turn off fill center. You made your own gradient and now this is looking disappointing. What? What do you mean disappointing? What graphic have you got there, M. Clemson? What's the script editor thing for again? Script editor for is in referring to the Visual Studio, that kind of thing. Is that what you're referring to, Asset? We haven't gotten to script editing yet at all yet. Didn't do any fancy edging, that's all. Well, you don't have to do any fancy edging. This is just a classic example of 9 slicing, where you divide it into 9 different zones. Oh, where the sprite editor is. So click on box, click on sprite editor, and then slow down. Select the asset, should appear in this inspector view. Click on sprite editor, which then appears here, and then you just drag the edges in and out like that, and then hit apply when you confirm that is what you want, and then you can close the window. It opens up as a separate window. I don't know where that window will appear in your world, in your desktop, but it will appear somewhere. I mean, you don't have to drag the edges either. You can also dial the numbers in here at the bottom, so if you know that they are exactly 6 pixels in, so you can just go left edge 6, top edge 6, right edge 6, bottom 6. That will work as well. You don't have to drag them in if you know the exact numbers. It's just I find it alright in this world to drag them in, unless, of course, the graphics are humongous. For what reason? Well, I've just given a reason. Yeah, so that the 9 slicing works. If you want to have these borders be fixed to the edges of where you want your image to be, then you have to define these edges like this. You have to define those edges as that. If you don't define them, then it appears like that, which basically stretches everything in the same proportion, which looks okay, but not great. But if you use the slicing that you defined, it fixes the borders and then stretches just the middle content like that. So that's what that's for. That's for the 9 slicing. Okay, other thing to talk about, I think, really, is the pivot. Because it's all well and good, everything being nice and rectilinear. But what if we want rotating things? What if we want something off at a kilter? So let's create another object. Let's go another UI image. And we'll make this one green. And we'll use one of the other graphics in here. So we'll use this Mrs. Yaka Yotcha Medium, which is from one of the asset pack things from Unity UI extensions. So we'll use this graphic in green. So let's just move it over here. Use the focus to move in. So in this this rect tool, you'll notice you've got the 4 corners and the edges, but you also have this circle blob in the middle. So this circle blob indicates the pivot position of this graphic, and everything you do transform wise is about that pivot. So if I wanted to rotate this character around, then I can rotate them around the Z-axis, which is the normal rotation axis, and it will rotate around that pivot, like that. Oh yeah, by the way, did not explain this, you can actually do this. To slide a value like this, then you can hover your mouse over the property name rather than the property value for the field. You'll get this special symbol, this left-right symbol. If you then click and hold and drag, you can then actually slide those values up and down like that with the left-right motion. Completely forgot you can do that. And why the Z-axis? That's because we're working in the XY plane, and to rotate something around like this, you need to rotate them in Z. Now you might think, why is this Z-axis the wrong way round? Because it's like positive Z rotation is making it turn anti-clockwise or counterclockwise. It does seem a bit of a strange decision to make that, but there is a reason. It's mathematically accurate to do it that way around. That's just how the angles are defined. They are defined with rotation going around anti-clockwise or counterclockwise. So you'll just have to remember that fact that rotation in this world is counterclockwise, not clockwise. But it's still in degrees, so don't worry about radians yet. We are still in degrees here. But as I say, everything is rotating around that pivot. So if I want to move that pivot, I can click on the pivot and then move it over here. So let's put it on the edge of this circle here. You just find it really satisfying seeing the image bounding box bounce as the image rotates. It is quite nice, isn't it? Yeah, as Lingo says, it's like drawing a unit circle and marking the cosine theta and sine theta. That's exactly how it is defined. But those that are not as mathematically inclined, don't worry about it. Just realise that rotation in the world is in counterclockwise units rather than clockwise units. But it's still in degrees. So I've moved this pivot by clicking on the pivot object and then dragging it down to the edge there. Then if I start rotating, now it's rotating around that pivot point. Your pivot's not moving. Are you sure that you are in? First of all, check that you're in rect tool mode with the T object. Make sure you have the object selected. And then make sure you have the mouse on the pivot itself. I believe anywhere inside of the circle should be accepted. And if you are there and you click and then drag with the left mouse, then it should move around. It is picky. I will tell you it is picky. Like that there, it's not close enough. That there isn't close enough, but that there is close enough. So it is picky. You just have to still dragging. It should do that. Try zooming in a bit further with the mouse wheel or using focus with F on the keyboard to make it maybe a bit easier. Because if you're well out here, it might be really difficult to grab a hold of it. But if you're closer, it might be a bit easier. Worth trying. Still drags. Okay. Also faded out. Oh, now faded out. What have you got selected? Which one have you actually got selected? So you definitely got the image selected. Glad there's a way to manually fix the pivot in the inspector because many a day we got a misplaced pivot. Yeah. Let's have a quick look. Assets, got an image. In the canvas, but it is grayed out. Asset, what does it say over on the right hand side on the inspector? I'm really intrigued to see what that is defined as at the moment. Because that's what the problem will be, is whatever is over on the right hand side. It's very strange that it's greyed out. Yeah, that looks all okay to me. It's not got any specific anchoring. Oh, hang on. No, what is that anchoring? Custom. Ooh. I'm not entirely certain what's happened there. But what we can do is, let's just see how this works. So, if you click on the rect transform, this weird gizmo here, this middle center gizmo, or it might say custom for you, it then pops out this window. If you hold down the shift key and then click on the center middle option, like this, then it should bring the pivot back to the center, and I hope should also bring it back into control. That's what I'm thinking. And then that, I don't know why it wouldn't work. You've got the right thing selected. It's not moving the pivot, removing the... It's moving the image. Yeah. So I don't know why... Oh, is it that? No, it's definitely not that. What have you got different then? Pivot 0.5, 0.5, untagged. I'm kind of interested by it, why it's not there. Unless the image itself doesn't have a pivot, but no, that can't be right. By default, it will have a pivot. Must be a mode somewhere. Yeah, it certainly does seem like there should be a mode somewhere where the problem is. That's a good one. I actually don't know why that's happened, but you can manually change the pivot position in that rect transform. So you can change the X value and the Y value theoretically and put it to where you need it to be. So instead of dragging it, you can change the values to, like, well, here I've got 0.190 and 0.141. Need to have... Ah, yes, that's the one, because then well done for finding that. Yes, so, yeah, you do need to be in pivot mode. Good catch. Good catch on that one. So along the top bar, make certain you have pivot selected in the tool handle position, and then you can start moving the pivot around. There we go. Thank you for finding that, Quizzy You Google that, yay! You'll find that as a programmer, that is a common thing you'll do, is Googling to find the answer. So, there we go. Ah, yes, there we go. We're all good now. So, while we're editing the pivots, make sure you're in pivot mode, and then it'll all work. There we go. We all learnt stuff today. So, you can move the pivot around, and then when you rotate in Z, then you can see it's rotating around that new pivot point. And also scales around that point as well. So if I scale in X, then it's scaling around that pivot point like that. Or scale in Y, it's scaling around that pivot point like that. So you can do all sorts of things. And it gives you some auto snapping options as well at halfway points and the edges. So if you want it to be on the edge, then you can pivot it like that. And yeah, rotate it as such. But everything is still based off of that pivot position. So this position, X and Y, when they're relative to their parent, will be from that pivot point. That's the only thing to worry about. So now that I have this pivot on the left edge, if I were to put that at the anchor 0, you'll see the position X and Y are 0, 0, because that's where it is relative to the pivot point. So we'll move it to 50 on the Y. This pivot point is now 50 Y units above from that anchor point. Hope that makes sense. Hope that works. It all makes sense, and you can now set your pivot to different locations to rotate it about different things or scale it about different things. Hopefully that makes sense. How are we all doing out there? Are we okay? I know it's a lot of yucky stuff to have to get through and boring stuff, but it is necessary before we move on, because if you don't understand the basics, then yeah, you're going to have a tough time with the Unity UI. Doing well so far? Okay. How far are we in at the moment? 1.5 hours. I don't mind having a quick break if you want, just a 2-minute break or something to get yourself a drink or anything you need to. Don't mind doing that before we move on to the next bit. There will be... what should we do? We need to add text in. We definitely need to do some text stuff. Got to get through the traffic to get through the week. Absolutely. So yeah, we'll get some text in a moment so you know how text works. So is better to put that tumbler to center or pivot now? Now, they do different things in the world, and when you get into 3D modeling, they're different things as well. For the time being, I'd probably say always use pivot, because that's you're going to be messing around with the pivot all the time. But if at any point you definitely don't want to touch the pivots and you don't want to accidentally move them, then maybe move it back into center mode to lock them out of use, potentially. So I would say yes, pivot mode, so that you can move things around. How are we doing on the game view? That's what the game view looks like. Okay. So what we need is, we need a background image, we need some text, just to test how text works, and then we can start making a podium. I think that's the next couple of steps to do. We can start making a podium up. Does it all make sense? Does anyone have any questions before we move on? Say, I'm not really an educator. I don't know how to teach properly. It's a bit weird in this streaming environment because I'm just blurting facts out at you and hoping that you absorb them without really getting any feedback. But so far, Quizzy Dan and Asset and Nautical Super 9 and Lisbets all seem to be okay, so should be all right. Cool. As I say, it's really boring stuff to start with. We're nowhere near actually making it. Well, actually, no, we're not nowhere near. We are actually close to being able to do things. "90% of my college professors didn't know how to teach properly and pay $1,000 to listen to them. You're all good." Oh, thank you, Ape. I'm hoping that at least this free lesson is helping out in some way. There's a lot of scary buttons in Unity, as you might see here. There's a lot of scary buttons, and some of them you just do not want to touch. Like that one there. It's collaborate. You don't want to use collaborate. Unity don't want me to tell you that, but collaborate, don't use it. Because it's terrible. I mean, even I'm learning new things on a regular basis, Ben. It's a constant learning process. It's a constant learning process. Oh, thank you, Bob. Thank you. It is dry. As I say, it's very dry to get going, but it's necessary. It's necessary to get to the interesting stuff. No, that makes complete sense, M. Clemson. Because every tool is different. As you see, this is very different to how PowerPoint works. This is very different to how... Probably very different to how Unreal Engine works as well. So every tool set is very different in how it works. It's just understanding how that works and getting into your mind how to get into the way of developing that way. Use code ASH15 to receive 50% off your next course. Thank you, Quizzy Dan. That is a great analogy as well, yes. Once you can walk, then you can go places, but learning how to walk is the hardest part. Very much so. And I'm trying to be very careful in what I'm saying because obviously there's a lot of caveats to what I'm saying. And yes, there are going to be a lot of habits to break as well. Coming from DirectX and OpenGL coded at the direct level. Oh my god! Hey, I remember those days back in university when I had to do my own DirectX and OpenGL engine. Oh, that was so much fun. No, it was not much fun at all. You'll get to animating the dog doing the attack chance motion soon. At some point, yeah, we'll get the dog doing attack chance. My only worry is me going too fast. That's the only thing. I'm purposefully bringing myself to be slower because I know I can do this a lot quicker. Right. Let's move on. Let's add in some... let's add a background image first because we can do that and I'll be able to demonstrate the order of things in the scene. So, let me find a background image. Yeah, absolutely, Quizzy Dan, yeah. You're going to be here until 6 p.m. then it's dinner time. I'll hopefully be streaming up until when Ben starts, so I'll have another 2 hours and a bit. And we'll see how far we can get with it. So let's just quickly get a background image. I'm not entirely concerned about what to get. Ooh, Starry Sky though. That's quite nice. Free download at basically the right size. I'm not a robot. Oh. Select all the squares with crosswalks. But this is a freeway. What the heck? There's no crosswalks here. There's a traffic light there though. I mean, I'm glad it's giving me that test. Okay, so we've got myself a Milky Way galaxy background. It can accept JPEGs, PNGs, TGAs, BMPs. I think it could also accept Photoshop files these days as well, PSDs, in Unity. So the major graphic formats it will accept. Directed by Capture, yes, indeed. Wasp, why are you trying to get through the window that is definitely closed? Oh, thank you, Asset. Thank you for the reset. I can't hear it at the moment.
This is a good start. Thanks.
Because I'm using
Hope to be
desktop audio rather than headphones because it's more comfortable that way. But want to start to learn some programming. This is a good start. Thanks. Hope to be a contestant of that 500 questions. Well, there'll be 500 questions to get through, so I'm presuming that we'll have a lot of contestants to get through as well. But thank you very much for the 3-month resub. And yeah, I'm hoping this will be a good start for a lot of new people to... We're not even got to coding yet. This is literally the starting steps of getting some graphics on screen. And then we'll get to moving them around as well with animations. Ooh, animations. Those familiar with a Flash background will probably start to twig on how that works. Because it's a similar process. It's a similar tweening process that you probably expected to in Flash. So we'll get to that in a moment. Anyway, background image first. So let's add a new image to our canvas. Which is going to be that. I'm going to give you a shortcut. Give you a quick shortcut on making a new graphic fit everything and anchor everything. So I was talking about this little gizmo here, this middle center gizmo. If you click that, then if you hold both Alt and Shift, then you'll see it's changed these things. And if you click this bottom right one, which stretches, it does that. It's now put them to the top, bottom, left and right, anchored to the top, bottom, left and right, and it has centered the pivot position as well. That is basically my de facto. I want something to fill the screen. I just go new object, click the thing, Alt and Shift, click the thing, and we're straight off into a full screen. And then if we give it the sprite of the background image, and we don't need to worry about preserving aspect because it is basically the same size. It's 1 pixel off. It's fine. But you'll see, well, it's over everything. Let me rename it as background as well. So click on the name, rename it as background and hit enter. So now it's called background. But you'll see it is over everything. We can't see my dog anymore. We can't see the bar. Now, to rearrange elements in the hierarchy, you can, quite simply, click and drag the object and you'll see this new blue line appear in places. So the blue line will say, I will be inserted at this point. You can also, if you hover over on object, it will make this object go grey or lighter grey. And that will mean I want to make this a child of this graphic. So higher in this hierarchy means it will draw earlier. So if I now bring the background to before my dog is an image, it will now render first, and then my dog is and image will draw afterwards. So now the background is the background. Similarly, if I was to have the dog here, as you see, the dog is currently rendering before the image. But if I wanted to swap those around, I can either drag my dog is down, or I could drag image up. So always, this one is a top-down order. So you read it in top-down order in the hierarchy, and it will render in that order. Yeah, the words will make it seem really weird, but yeah, that's this layering heuristic. Nay, yeah, I know it's a bit of a thing because I know there are edge cases where you might want things to appear in different places, and you can try changing the Z, thinking, oh, that's going to reposition them in the render order. Unfortunately, it does not. Position Z does not change the render order. However, if you don't like this layering heuristic and you still want some control over the render order, then you can change it. Now, how do you do that? Because I tend to never do this, but you can change it. Which one is it? Which is the one I need to do? I forget myself. Override sorting, I think, is what we need. So currently, the image, which is that this Mrs. Yaka image, is currently behind the dog. But if I change the sort order, like that, with this new added canvas, I can now reorder this particular image. So now it can appear afterwards. Again, a higher number on the sort order means it will draw later. So it sort of appears more towards the camera. However, you will also notice if I do this and I move the background up as well, it's an operating precedence thing. So this will draw everything at canvas level 0 first, and then it will draw everything at canvas level 1 later. So you can override it if you want, but it is a bit messy because it will still do things in the order you specify with the sort order. So what I will say is I would stick to the native layering anyway, because it sort of makes sense. You have to, again, you'll need to get your head around that fact, but once you have gotten your head around that fact, then it makes sense. It's a bit finicky, but at least then with things that are parented inside each other, as you see this bar is parented to my doggies, so will get rendered at the right time. Is basically in this render order. And I've put image there, and then yeah, it still renders my doggies and the bar, and then it renders the image. Can you do it coding layer level, sort of like send to back? Can you do that in the code? Well, in terms of, well, you basically, yes. What you do in that regard is in code you will set the sibling index of the object to 0, and 0 means it would be the first sibling, and that basically sends it to the back. So you can change things after the fact in code and change them and reorder them, but it is a bit of a, it's still, it's based off of the order in the hierarchy. Might be more comfortable that way when we get there. Okay, fair enough. Okay, so that's how the background and how the hierarchy works, and that hierarchy does matter unless you override it, and then it gets a bit more of a pain, I would say. Let's add some text. We need some text in this world. So we will go to create. So click on the canvas object, go to UI. Now you've got some options here. You can go text or Text Mesh Pro. I would recommend in this day and age to use Text Mesh Pro because the tooling for it is so much better than the original native text. Problem with it is that it does take a little longer to get a font to work with it, but once you have gotten it to work, it's fine. So if you create yourself a Text Mesh Pro text element, you'll see it has new text and it is in white. So I want to say, let's get some lorem ipsum in here. Lorem ipsum generator. I agree. Let's just get the original lorem ipsum paragraph. There we go. Put that into the text input. There we go. Well, that looks a bit crap, doesn't it? That's because it is clamped to this rectangle. So if you want to change where the wrapping occurs, then you can change the rectangle. Now, this is the problem with Text Mesh Pro, is that they actually have 2 rectangles in it. This one I'm moving is the yellow rectangle, which is the Text Mesh Pro's internal rectangle. But there is also the Unity rectangle. There are 2 different rectangles, which makes it a little irritating. Generally, what I do is I prefer not to touch the Unity rectangle where possible. However, as you can see, in some cases, it's difficult to do that because you end up touching the Unity rectangle instead. So this little blob here, this white square, these ones are for handling the TextMesh Pro rectangle, and not touching that is touching the Unity rectangle. This is only because TextMesh Pro didn't like how rectangles worked in Unity, and they basically added their own to it. You can change those values. They are in the extra settings. There are these margins you can specify, but I tend to not really touch those because I can reposition stuff with the rectangle normally anyway. Inside you is two rectangles. One screws up your text and one screws up your brain. It really does. So you resize the Unity rectangle and you can get it to wrap a bit nicer. You can also change the color of the text. It's a bit difficult reading the red text there, so we'll keep it white for the time being. Change the size of the text, so let's make it 72 point size. Now it's a bit too big again. Let's do that little trick again where we click the middle center option, hold Alt and Shift, and then click the bottom right option, and we can get it to snap to the full width of the screen. Just like that. You can change the text style, which actually, this is a new thing I've not seen before. I'm guessing this is a feature available in Unity 2020, which isn't available in previous versions, because I've not seen text style before. So that's a new thing. So apparently you can define header styles, link styles, etc. if you're familiar to how HTML works, I guess. That's a way of describing that. So that's a new thing. You can also do some styling, rich text styling inside the text as well, if you're familiar with that. So to do some bold text, you can go open angle bracket, B, close angle bracket, and then the text from that point onwards will be bold, which you can then do with a closing tag with open angle bracket, / B, closing angle bracket. So if you're similar with that. What is enable RTL editor? So that, Ben, is for those fonts or locales that use right to left text. So we're thinking like Arabic, we're thinking like Hebrew. Those particular languages will use fonts that are right to left oriented. So when you have the enable RTL editor, it will actually format that text editor to work with right to left text properly. So that's what that's there for, is to enable right to left text in those locales and languages that need it. Egyptian hieroglyphs if you're feeling fancy, but we don't need to worry about that. So there are some rich text things. There's bold, italic, underline. You can change the color. You can change the size. If you're interested in that kind of thing, which we're not going to get into right now, you can look up TextMesh Pro style guides for more information. Where's the text color? There's this vertex color option here that changes the overall text color for everything. Like that. So we can just change the color along color wheel, whatever we want. But if you do want a specific color, I'll give you this one for free. If you do want a specific color somewhere in your text, let's say I want the acceptor word to be a different color, then I can go angle bracket, COLOR, yes, it's the US spelling, equals, I think it's just FFF. Oh, well, let's go with red, so that'll be F00. Or does it want to be a 6 style hex? It might be a 6 style hex. Let's just quickly check it. Or does it need the hash these days? It does need the hash. Okay. So the format is angle bracket, color, COLOR, equals, then hash, and then a hexadecimal code for the color. Close the angle bracket, and then put your words in, and then put your closing tag in. You can also do just the worded version of the color as well. So red, yellow, blue, cyan. Nope, cyan is not. It's magenta, one of them. Nope, it's probably pink then. Tricolor equals pink. No, not even pink either. Okay, so there's just very basic ones. I don't think it will go as far as the Windows list of names. No, it's just very basic color names. So just very basic color names. So black, white, red, green, blue from the looks of things. And yellow. Maybe orange. Yes, there's orange as well. Violet. Is that there? Or is it purple? purple is there as well as another colour. So there's a couple of ones, but if you know the hexadecimal, then you could put hash and then a six character hexadecimal code will work. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you cannot see that because that is like the best colour to use to hide the text in the background. Text might be written as kind of. Wikipedia uses a different tagging system, but yeah, in a similar sort of vein, yes. In a similar sort of vein. Let's say there is more reference on that. If you look for Text Mesh Pro, rich text, that's the keyword you want there. It's a bit of dry reading, but it gives you all of the different options there. I'll give you that link in the Unity workshop for further reading. So it has all these extra features that you can have and all the descriptions of how they work. So, and yes, you can also put sprites in there as well. So that's some text. That's how text works. So we've got text, we've got a dog, we've got the 9 slicing, we've got recoloring, we've got the image ordering. Ooh, we got lots of stuff done there, haven't we? We've got lots of stuff there. You can also change the alignment of the text if you didn't notice that. Below on the Text Mesh Pro element, you can change if it's left, center, or right, whether it's justified, flush, or geometry center, which is different to regular center, and you go top, middle, bottom, or cap line, baseline, anything like that. So whatever your alignment needs are, they are there. It's basically what caused the whole large. So yeah, this stuff here, yeah, exactly. So size equals 500. There you go. That there is someone putting in a size tag in their name in Fall Guys and ruining it for everyone. Now, I'll show you the fix. I'll quickly show you the fix to that problem. Because it really is a very simple fix. So if you don't want your text with rich text in it, then you can scroll down here into the extra settings, which is it's a click to expand or collapse thing. So you go to that, and then you see this property called rich text. Just tick that off, and there you go. Rich text is now off. It will no longer process tags as rich text, and it's just now raw text. That's it. That's all the fix needed to be over on that side. Can't see you, Bobby Tables. That problem and oh well, you've got 2 hours, Ben, to patch that problem. You have 2 hours to patch the problem. To be fair, there's only what 12 text elements that you need to worry about for that. There are literally only 12 text elements to worry about that for you, Ben. Everything else is fine. It's only the ones that are displaying the answers they give. And there's only one per podium, and there's 12 podiums, so it's an easy job for you. It's an easy job for you, hopefully. Because Twitch names can't include characters like these anyway, so you don't need to worry about Twitch names. So it's an easy fix for you, Ben. It's an easy fix. Right, so yeah, that's text and all of that. So shall we get a podium sorted? Shall we sort out a podium? Just thinking if it uses rich text anywhere else. Potentially so. It's for the sorts of people who do well in game shows. Others thought you'd do silly things with names that's well established. Yeah, okay. Shall we sort out player podium? Let's do a player podium. Okay. Does mean I'm going to be saying goodbye to a couple of things for the time being. So let's get rid of the text, the image, and my dog ears for now. I'll just leave the background as is. You know what? I'm going to change the colour of the background slightly as well. Let's darken it down a bit and maybe make it. Yeah, just leave it like that. There we go. Oh, we'll be seeing Doggy return later at the podium. So we now need a player podium. Anyone have a decent image for a player podium? Oh, of course. The first thing that come up would be a Jeopardy podium. All right, catch you later, Christian. Have a good dinner, and yeah, we'll catch you later. Chain letters podium. I don't want to just rip someone else's work like that though, because they've obviously gone to the effort of making that. Anyone have any good good graphics for a podium that we can use for this? Just for the time being. There's a lot of Lewis Hamilton apparently. I mean, we could just do a simple rectangle, but I would prefer something a little more complicated than just a rectangle. All right. Let me just quickly construct something in paint.net. So we're going to have it be 300 wide. No, 300 is probably too... no, 300 is about okay. And we'll go 450 high. It's probably a bit too big, but we can scale it down. That's no problem. So let's create some rectangles. Yay, rectangles. So that there is going to be a thing. That's not a podium. That's a vase asset. That's a vase. Anyway, let's quickly create this. So we do... no, we're not doing with outline. So let's do it with outline. Make it 8. So we're going to have that. We're then going to have... oh, I've made this way too tall. That. And then... no, I don't like that. Start again. Like that. Wider. Something like that. I'm going to recolor this a little as well. So it's not just completely... it's basically a castle. Basically a castle. Okay. We're going to recolor the base a little darker, I think. So, I can, nope. Tolerance lower, please. Darker. There we go. We'll make the player name display. Ooh, shoot. Be that one. Like that. Yeah, that'll do. Something like that. Something like that will do. And then let's just shrink the size of the image down to that. So crop it down. This is going to be a very basic podium which looks terrible. Oh, hey, that looks better, though. That looks a lot better. That looks very Jeopardy-like, must be said. Shall I use that one? Let's use that one, then. That asset's just given. Let's just share that one. It's much better than this. Let's put it that way. That one there. Open the original. Save image. It's very nice. It's very nice indeed. Docs, programming, Unity Workshop, assets, game, podium. Come on, PC, do your thing. There we go. Podium is now saved. Thank you for that asset. Right, so now we should be able to get a podium in here. So let's go to game. Now there is another shortcut to getting an image into the scene. I did show you that you could do, obviously, UI image from here and then pick it or drag it. But you can actually drag it directly from assets. So, we've got the podium here. If we drag a podium into the canvas... that doesn't work into the canvas, though. Okay. You can do that, but it only works at root level. I did not... unless then I drag it on the canvas object. And then it... Oh no, that uses a sprite renderer. That's not the right thing. Ignore I ever told you that, because that's not how it works. It doesn't work in this case for Unity UI images in the same way. So ignore what I said. So to create a new UI image, it's going to be called podium. And then we're going to drag the podium onto the source image like that. And we're going to preserve the aspect ratio of it. And let's make it a bigger podium. There we go. We've got a nice big podium. Now, what I'm thinking is that we're going to have multiple people here. So, what I'm going to do is, actually, first of all, I'm going to create a layout for these podiums, a horizontal layout. So, if I click on Canvas, UI, now see I can't create a layout from that, so we'll be creating an empty game object to start with. So, click on the canvas, right click and go create empty game object, and this we're going to be calling podiums. Then we're going to add a component to this game object, so click the add component button, and you want to look for what's called the horizontal layout group. Not the scroll snap, but the horizontal layout group. So search for the word horizontal and then click on horizontal layout group. And what this does is it will create a layout group within this object which will lay out all of its children in a horizontal manner. So if I were to make a row along the bottom. Now, again, I gave you a shortcut to making this fill everything, but you can use a similar shortcut to make it fill along the bottom edge. So with this button selected and there, click the button to open the window, should I say, then hold Alt and Shift like before. But if I select this one here, which is bottom stretch rather than everything stretch, then it anchors it to the bottom, stretches it along the bottom, keeps the same size, which will change in a moment, but it pins it all the way to the bottom like that. So what I'm actually going to do, I'm going to bring the anchor up. So let's bring the anchors up to about, I don't know, about 0.35. We'll make it 0.35 and we'll reset the top to 0. And we're going to drop our podium into the podium's object to get it to layout. So on the podium, drag that podium object that we've got selected into the podium's object on the hierarchy. It'll go slightly lighter grey to say that we're going to drop it in, let go, and it'll drop in. And now it is in the horizontal layout. So if I were to create a new version of this podium, so if you want to copy and paste things in here, then you can use your standard copy and paste options like that. Or there is a shortcut for duplicating, and that is Control D. If you use the command Control and D, or you go to Edit and Duplicate, then it will duplicate the object, which basically is copy and paste all in one go. And as you can see, as we're adding more podiums to this layout, it's keeping them horizontally laid out for us, and it's just respacing them as we need. But I don't want them laid out like this. I want them laid out together, close together, and I also want them in the middle rather than pinned to the left. So for that, we want to change the child alignment, and I'm going to put that to, let's say, middle center. So now it will try and center the children. And I also don't want the child to expand, because at the moment each of these elements is actually quite large. It's actually, like in this case, because there's two of them, is 50% of the width each. So if we change on the podium's option to not expand on the width, then it will keep the original size of each podium the same as they were, and they'll just stack next to each other instead. So now if we want 4 podiums, we create 4 podiums like that, and they're all nicely laid together in a horizontal layout, stacked close up together, and it's all good. Why my podium becoming like this after putting... what have you got? What does the rect transform say for the podiums object? Just intrigued asset. You have 0.50. Anchors, we don't know yet, but you are basically done the same thing from looks of things. Okay. What does, if you select one of the podium objects, what width does it have specified? Mine at the moment has got it as a width of 338, but that could be whatever, and you can make that a negative width, which will make it do an X thing. If you just change that width size, does that help you? Did they help their asset change the size of it to width? You should be able to change that width because it's not grayed out. The thing to worry about is, do you have child force expand width off or on here? It needs to be off for that to be a editable value. If you have it on, then it will be a fixed size and you won't be able to do... Well, actually, you can do stuff with it. That's interesting. That's different in new Unity as well. It never used to do that before, and now it does. That's strange. Anyway, we don't want it to force expand width anyway. You're stuck on this step. Okay. Don't know what to suggest on that one at the moment. Because it's saying all the right things. You can't drag the anchors properly. Well, ooh. Well, that was pretty special. That's just happened then. Yeah, you won't be able to change the anchors because the podium objects are being controlled by the layout on the podium's plural object, the parent object. So while you have this horizontal layout group on, you're not going to be able to change the anchoring because you don't need to worry about the anchoring. The layout does that for you. It's one of the few times where you can just ignore anchoring. Thank you for the follow there, Blurry Pixels. Thank you for the follow, greatly appreciated. What I might say, Asset, is always worth just doing a delete of what you've got and start it again. I know it's a bit of a pain, but we only have a few objects here, so we can quickly go through it again. So let's start it from fresh. So from the canvas object, we want to do right click and do create empty, and that creates us this object which we'll have as our podium's parent. We then click on the middle center object, middle center button, holding Alt and Shift. We then click on bottom stretch to stretch it out like that. Change the anchor maximum Y. We set that to 0.3, I believe. So change the anchor maximum Y to 0.3, and then reset the top to 0, and that sets the podium's size back to where we were. Then we could create a component of that. We add on horizontal layout group, and we then untick the child force expand option. So you should only have child force expand height as the option selected there. Then inside of podiums, create UI image that creates just a basic square, and then put in the podium graphic, and then you should be able to change the size of that podium graphic to fit what you need, and also preserve aspect as necessary if you need to. So I'm going to set it to about that size. I'm going to rename that as a podium as well to make it easier for me. And then I should be able to duplicate that podium to add more podiums like this, more podia. And then if we go back to the podium's parent object, we can change the alignment back to middle center, which then puts them into the center of the bottom of the screen. Does that work now, Asset, after redoing that? Or are you still having an issue somewhere? Obviously, you don't have to use it. It's now gone good. Don't know what went wrong initially. Sometimes, Asset, that just happens, and the best fix is just delete it and do it again if it gets broken. Because it could be all sorts of things that have gone wrong. Now, obviously, you don't even have to use a layout group for this. You can just manually place them if you want to. But the layout groups are really useful in doing all of that automatic laying out for you. So like that, I didn't have to define that this was exactly at this position with this height or that. It just did it for me. So it's very useful for nice layouts in a horizontal or vertical layout, to just add in a number of podiums like that. Now, I'm just going to delete 3 of these podiums for the time being, because we are only going to work on one of them for now, and it'll be easier to duplicate after the fact once we've set up one of the podia. Hello, Egg. Welcome. Following the week, I've just had a 5-hour phone call with a friend, making sure you're okay and having a. Yeah, I did read that message you sent on Facebook. My condolences, and I'm hoping you're feeling better about it. It's never fun. It's never fun, those kind of situations. I know I went through that this year. In a similar regard, in fact, a very similar regard to your situation. So I know how you're feeling. In fact, I'm welling up now just thinking about it. But good to hear you're getting better, and it's always going to be tough. But hope you get better soon, and we're all here for you. We're all here for you. Okay. Anyway, let's work on this podium, shall we? So this podium. Let's say, well, we want the podium to have a person or thing behind it. Hello, Whiskers. You are a person or a thing, are you? I didn't know you were, but I guess we could have you. But I think we're going to have the dog. So, on this podium object, let's add a dog. So, with podium selected, we're going to go UI image to create a new image, and we're going to drop in the Labrador head as the podium icon. Do you want me to find the Whiskers image? I'll find the Whiskers image then. Wow. I mean, she's not asleep this time, that's also true. Go on then, let's find Whiskers. Let's find the Whisker Queen image. Where are you? Twitch, emotes. Queen original 500. Let's drop that in. There we go. She's going to be completely missing out, so let's quickly change Labrador head for... There we go. There we go, we've got Whiskers in the game now. So yeah, find whatever image you want. Now, let's do some positioning, auto-positioning things. We want to put it at the top of the image for the time being. So let's put the... No, Whiskers, you're not allowed those treats. No, you're not allowed those treats. No, I know. Oh, I know, Whiskers. You're not allowed them right now, okay? You're not allowed them right now. I'm teaching. I'm trying to. I'm trying to teach now, Whiskers, so you can't have them right now. So let's put the put Whiskers at the top. Actually, what I'm going to do first is I'm going to change the pivot. I'm going to move the pivot of Whiskers to the bottom. So do that by going to pivot Y and changing that to 0, because as we say, Y is from the bottom going up, very much like a chart is. X goes from left to right, Y goes from the bottom up. Next community challenge, 50,000 for Whisker Streets. Probably something like that. So set the pivot to 0. Now click on the anchor presets button, and then we will click the top center option. Actually, I shouldn't have done that. Let's try that again. With Alt selected, because we want to move it as well. That's the thing I messed up there. So if you clicked it and you got this situation, just undo it back to where we were, and then actually you want to do Alt and then click top center to... I see. I thought that would have moved it with the pivot, but it did not. Again, undo. Okay, well, we don't need to do that then. I thought that would have done the thing, but it doesn't do the thing, actually. So, what we're going to do is just change the Y position to... because of the anchor... hang on. So I was right, actually. Sorry, I was right. Let me backpedal a couple of moments. Donkeys are aliens, donkeys are aliens. So what we actually want to do is just click top and center without any extra shift or alt keys. And that moves the anchor. That's what I wanted to do. Move the anchor first. Okay. The anchor's now been moved to the top middle point. We then change the Y position to 0, and that puts Whiskers at the top of that podium object, like that. Now, if we want her to be slightly larger, then we just change the width, and we change the height, like that. And there we go. We have Whiskers behind a podium, just like that. We can fine-tune it a bit, so you can see it's slightly not quite matching there, so we can actually bring the Y down a little. to make it match a bit. So let's make it -4 or something like that. There we go. So now Whiskers is sitting at the podium. Player also has a name though, so let's add a text element for that. So with podium again selected, you want to right click, go to UI, and then go to Text Mesh Pro. And I'm going to put in player as the default player name. I'm going to have it center aligned. I'm going to have it center aligned on that dimension as well. Then what we want to do for positioning in this case is I think we should probably use anchors here to make it a little easier for us, because it's always going to be the same kind of positioning for it. So let's move the anchor to the top left of the screen there, and move the anchor to the bottom right of the screen there. Just like, oh, this is where you can get really pedantic with the sizing, you see. So something like that, and that. There we go. And then go to the left, top, right, and bottom values, and let's reset those to 0. And that puts the text element exactly where we want it. However, if we've got a player with a really long name that always irritates programmers, you'll see it kind of doesn't fit. So to make that work, there are obviously a few ways to fix it. You could make the text really, really small, but that doesn't work then if you've got a player with a name that's just Bob. You know, Bob in that podium, when we come back to the full screen, is like, well, I can't read that. I can't read Bob anymore. So that's not really a good fix, is it? Another fix we could do... is there another fix we could do? Obviously you can just make them force their name to be short. That's a way to fix it as well. But then again, some people do have long names, and again, just truncating it is not going to be any good. What about Keith? I mean, I could also have done Keith. So the way around it is auto-sizing. Auto-sizing is a feature of TextMesh Pro, which is very nice. In fact, auto-sizing is not a feature of the regular text element. I'll let that settle in for you again. The original text element in Unity did not have auto-sizing as an option. Truncating can indeed also cause problems such as the Scunthorpe problem or the Peniston problem, for those that understand those. So, thankfully, Unity acquired TextMesh Pro, which is far superior and has auto-sizing as a feature. So, you see there, font size of 36, and below that is a tick box for auto-size. So, let's tick that. Now it's almost done it. It's almost made it work. Unfortunately, this very long name is still a bit too long. However, we can still tune the minimum size to whatever size we dare go down to. So if the absolute minimum size we want the name to go down to is like 12, then that name fits. And if we zoom all the way out, it's barely readable. Like on the game view, you could barely read that name, I guess. That's fair enough. But if we then have a name of Bob, it's nice and clear, isn't it? You can definitely see that name of Bob. So, auto size, and it will always try and fit the text inside of the bounds of the element. You can do a few other nifty things. So, if you have a player with a very long single word name, you'll see it tries to shrink it down and then it gives up and wraps it around. You can also do horizontal shrinking of text rather than both, and that is controlled by this WD% value, which is, it says there, compresses character width up to this value before reducing font size. And I do use this, and I use it up to 0.5. Actually, sorry. It's now actually a percentage value. It used to be not a percentage value. Now it is. So if you set that up to 50%, which is the maximum it'll accept, then it will compress characters at the maximum of 50% of its original width to make it fit. And now a player with a very long single word name actually fits, and the text size is actually fairly reasonable. Personally, I make the text box smaller than the screen it's on. As in this particular box. Yeah, I mean, that's entirely doable as well. As you see, I've set the anchoring so that it's perfectly aligned to it, but if I want it to be inset by a few pixels, then I can change these numbers here, the left, top, right and bottom, to be inset by a certain number of pixels or canvas units, so that they're not completely flush with the edge. 4 might be a bit too much there, so if we change it to 2, then you've just got this 2 canvas unit edge around everything so that it doesn't completely touch the edge of the text box. So you get that. So now you have Bob, and then you've got Keith, and you've got Whiskers, and it all fits and has some more names that fit like this. So there you go. That's a nice way of adding in a text element that shrinks text to fit. Is that all we need to have for a podium? No, not quite. So that there was the name element. There's one other thing that we're going to have to this podium element. We're going to have a score. So we're going to have another text element. And actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this name object because it's already pretty well defined at the moment. So let's select name and duplicate. I mean, yeah, I'm not doing it the traditional Jeopardy fashion. Normally the name of the player is here and the score's up here. I'm not doing it the traditional Jeopardy way. I'm doing it more the panel quiz attack way, where the big square is the score and they don't actually have a name. Anyway, so created a new copy with duplicate, which is Control D, or you go edit and duplicate. And then let's redo these anchors for this display down here. So move the corner to there, and we move the other corner to there. Okay. Then reset these numbers to 2222, something like that, so they're just slightly inset again, and give this a score of 0. A version of PQA where you stand for 9 questions if you're wrong. Yep. Yep. So there we go. We have there a score display with 0. Obviously, you can just give it as many numbers as you want. And 0 there at that size of 72 seems fairly reasonable as well. Maybe we want this to be bold, so let's make that some bold text. I wonder if there's anyone out there that's thinking, well, it'd be nice to have a drop shadow or something. So, drop shadows with TextMesh Pro is a bit more awkward. You have to create a separate material for it, because if you go and tweak the properties of this particular material now, it will change it for every instance that you've already got with it, which is probably not what you want to do. So what you actually want to do is you want to create a new material for it. So with this TextMesh Pro element selected, scroll down on the inspector. So scroll down and you'll see this material section, which might be collapsed like this. So click the little triangle to drop it down. And there'll be this little triple dot option that we used before for the reset on the rect transform thing. If you click the triple dot button, you can then create a material preset. So if you click that, it creates a new material preset, which actually has already been defined, surprisingly. Does it really? I did not think it should have done that. That should have created a new material object, not a parent object. Apparently, that's created. That's already been there. Okay, that's special, I guess. Oh no, that is a new one. What? Hang on, what? Select the. No, what? I've created a material preset, and it's now a new one. But where is it? So if I change these settings, it's now just going to be on that one. It is. So is this one here? Oh, it is. Yeah, sorry. Duh. Yeah, it is. It is this one. It did do the right thing. It's just because this arrow thing here looked like it was part of the asset, but it's actually not. These are the things that are part of this asset. So it did create a new one. And then let's rename it. Now, thing with TextMesh Pro and material names is you must always include the original name in there somewhere. If you don't, it doesn't appear in the drop down. So what we're going to do is going to keep it as named as Liberation Sans space SDF, and then at the end of the name we're going to put score. So it now says Liberation Sans SDF score. And if we go back to name, the material preset, and make certain that we are using Liberation Sans SDF score as our option. Now we can tweak that individually. Do we want an outline? We can add a small outline, I guess. So let's do that. So click on outline, change the thickness, change the color however you want. You can also alpha it out as well if you don't want it to be as overt. So let's do that. If you want to have a drop shadow, that's in the underlay section. Can you repeat about shading thing again? Yep, sure. Let me, in fact, backpedal and start it from fresh. So let me delete that and start this one again. So this is where we were at. So to create a new material preset for your text, go down to where the material is defined. Go to where the triple dot option is over on the right hand side. So you've got a question mark button, you've got some parameters button, and you've got the triple dot button. Click the triple dot button and then click create material preset. This will create a new asset. In this case here it's created one called Liberation Sans space SDF. Now the extra caveat is that for those materials to appear correctly in TextMesh Pro, you must keep this part of the name safe. You can add new parts to the name afterwards, but the first part of the name must always be Liberation Sans space SDF, because that was the name of the font we based it off of. I'll give you a tutorial later on how to add your own font into this rather than using this original font, and then how that works, because it's basically the same flow, but yeah, there'll be extra things to worry about. So do that and then rename that and add on the word score at the end. Go back to that new object we created, which was actually, it's a score object, isn't it? So let's rename it score. Go to material preset and make certain it is using that new one we've created, which is Liberation Sans SDF score. And then we can scroll down and we can now start messing around with the material properties. So let's create some thickness to the outline, like that. And then underlays, where you can do shadows or sort of background stuff. So we can go dilate it out a bit, offset it to the X, offset it to the Y, and we can soften it up a bit so it blurs out a bit, like that. And if we want it to be more obvious, then we can bring the alpha up on it. And you just sort of play around with however you feel you want with the shadow options. Even if you want shadow options, you don't have to have shadow on at all if you don't want it. So that's how you add outline and underlay. And of course you can change the color at the top here, and that just changes the base color of the text, just like that. Okay, I think that's all we need to do for a podium. We've got a player image, we've got a name, we've got a score. I guess each podium is supposed to be a different color. Now that's going to be a bit difficult to do. Probably in this case what I recommend is just have the same podium image but done with 4 different colors. That would be the easiest way to do it in this case. So in the case of Panel Quiz Attack, there are 4 colors that we need to worry about, which is red, green, white and blue. So what I'm going to do is going to quickly open up that podium, and we're going to just recolor parts of the podium. So the first color is red that we need to change. So just change that to red and that to red, and save this as podium red. Okay, next one we need to do is green. I'm not going to go for a stupidly bold green, I don't think. Let's go with that kind of green. Green. Save that as podium green. Next one is white. That wants to be mostly white, basically. Like that. Paste. Make that podium white. And then the last one is blue, which we already had in the original case, did we not? The original one was blue, so let's quickly just bring that one back in and just rename that as podium. Or actually, we should make it a slightly more vivid blue. Like that. That's probably more blue. That'll do for podium. Blue. So then we come back in here. So for this first podium, we should use, let's go back to where we were at underscore game. This one should be podium blue. So select the podium and we'll drop in podium blue. That looks all right. Now we can duplicate this podium a couple of times to add some more podiums to the game. So now we have 4 players and they've already got all their extra elements parented together when we duplicated them. The second one we want there is green. So we will change the graphic from podium blue to podium green, like that. Next one along was the white podium. So we changed that one. And then the last one was red. And just like that, we've got 4 different podium colours with each of them has a name, each of them has a score, each of them has an image as well. And we might as well save at this point, just to make certain that we do keep a hold of all our changes. So go to File and then Save. And also, little caveat here, also do File, Save Project as well to save absolutely everything. Because saving the scene sometimes isn't enough. You do have to also save the project. And unfortunately, Save Project does not have a keyboard shortcut, so you have to manually go to File, Save, Project. Very irritating, I know. Okay. I know I don't have many people following along right now because they've got off to have food or do other things. I'm certain they'll be catching up on the VOD later. But whoever is around, are we all okay? Are you following along okay? Have we gotten to a similar situation? Again, about save functions. Yes. So, in most cases, saving the scene is fine. So going to File and Save, or hitting Control and S is fine for saving. However, when we get later down the lines with more coding stuff, sometimes that isn't enough, and you will also need to do File, Save Project. That does a final save on everything, so that will save anything that has changed. So it's always worth doing save the scene with Control S or going File Save, and also save the project to save anything else that isn't necessarily in this scene. Also with Tupnai just chilling, following along, and Liswitz says so far so good. Beautiful. All right. Had the delivery, so missed a bit, but I think I'll be able to fill the gaps on the VOD. Okay. Cool. All right. Well, we have podiums, we have names, we have player images, we have scores. Shall I do our first script? Shall we do our first little bit of coding? I think we can get that done before 8 PM and describe some of the basics. Let's get something in so that we can control the names and the scores of these players. Time for everything to explode. Absolutely, here we go. So, here we go. If you want to change these names to more sensible things like Podium Blue, etc., then do by all means do so, because I don't like them when they have the numbers on the end. So I'm just going to rename them to Podium Blue, Green, White, and Red. Names don't matter here because we're not going to be referencing them by name. Not at this point anyway. Okay, and I'm going to save, and I'm also going to save the project because I've changed things. Okay. Here we go, folks. Here's our first script. So, with one of the podiums selected, because we're just going to do this for one of the podiums for now, you want to then go to Add a Component. You then want to type in the name that you want. So we're going to create a podium script, so we're going to call it Podium. So type in Podium, it hasn't found anything. That's expected. However, select New Script, and then create with the name of Podium, then click on Create and Add, or hit the Enter key. Either or will work, and it will now create a new script. At least it should have done. It did not. Why did it not? Oh no, it is. It's just Unity taking a little bit of time to get there. because it's recompiling. Whenever you add some new code to the project, it will recompile everything. And depending on your machine, that may take some time. So do give it a little moment. But once it is done, theoretically, you should now see a new component here called Podium with the script called Podium. Hopefully we see that. And rather unhelpfully, it's created the scene here in the top level assets. I don't like it there, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this script file back into our underscore game folder. So I've just gone to the top level assets, selected the Podium asset, click and drag, and we're moving that into underscore game. What I recommend, whenever you're moving assets around, do it in Unity. Don't do it in Windows Explorer or Mac Finder, because you can screw things up with metadata information if you do it in Windows Explorer or Mac Editor. Always move your assets in Unity so that Unity knows what you're doing and why you're moving things around. Because if you just suddenly go, no, I want it over here somewhere in Windows, and you don't tell Unity first, it might have a bit of a mare about it and complain. So whenever you're moving things around, do it in Unity, because Unity knows best, I guess. Yes, deleting something outside of the Unity editor can be a very bad idea, because then you'll get missing references, and that then breaks things, and can break things irrecoverably sometimes. Okay, well, with that moved back in here, we now have the Podium script. So hopefully you've got some software installed on your machine to edit it. Hopefully you should be able to double click on the Podium script, and that will then open it into a script editor. In this case here, I've got it opened up in Visual Studio 2019 Professional. You might have it opened up in MonoDevelop, you might have it opened up in JetBrains, you might have it opened up in VS Code, whatever. It may even have opened up in Notepad. But hopefully you should see something along these lines in that file. So, time to start going through what all this means. At this top section here of the code, we have these things called usings, and what a using is basically it tells the rest of the compiler that I want to use this thing from over there. So I have some code that there is some code in a thing called Unity Engine, and this line here is saying I want to use the Unity Engine stuff, please, in this file. It also is also asking for these things as well, but at the moment they're not needed. So for now, I'm just going to delete those two lines, because those two lines are not necessary. What you'll notice also is that there is the semicolon at the end of this line. Now, at the end of every declarative line in C#, you do need to have the semicolon at the end to say that you have finished the line. You might see that these ones don't have any semicolons because they're not technically finishing anything. If you've come from languages like C or C++, then you're very familiar with how semicolons work. Semicolons are necessary to say that you have ended the line. Python does not have semicolons in its natural flavor. I think there is a weird flavor out there that does have them, if you have some weird translation version of it, but the regular version of Python does not have it. But the thing is, with a good compiler, a good IDE, a integrated development environment, that's what that stands for, it will tell you when you should be using semicolons or not. It will give you red underlines where you're doing things wrong anyway. So at the moment, there's no bad lines anywhere, so you have said everything right. Yes, Python gets messy with white space characters and things like that, whereas you don't necessarily have to worry about that here. Okay, next we have a public class Podium mono behavior. What does all this mean? So, public means that everything else in this project can know about what a Podium is. If you were to say that was a private class Podium, then nothing else in this script will know how that works. Now, unfortunately, we can't do that anyway. It's telling me that we can't do that. Elements defined in namespace cannot be explicitly defined as that. So, public it shall be in this case. It's always good to be public class Podium for these scripts. Anyway, Podium is saying that that is the name of this class, and this is the special extra caveat with C# with Unity. Whenever you're adding a component, the name here has to be exactly the same name as the file name, without the .cs, but they have to be the same. They cannot be different. If they are different, Unity will not see it as a component. Now those that know just regular classes and that, you can obviously just create whatever class you want in a file and it will work. But to add it as a component, it has to be the same name. And I do believe it does have to be case sensitive as well, also Quintuple 9, yes. It's always good to be using the same case wherever possible anyway. But they do have to be the same name. If they're not named the same, then it will not be able to discover it as a component and things will go wrong. And then this last bit here, this colon mono behavior, means that this Podium class is deriving a lot of its behavior from this thing called mono behavior. Now, the reason for it named as such is quite bad. It's a very old name. This harks back to when Unity was very harshly baked on the mono C# engine. Nowadays, it is nowhere near as hard baked onto that. You can now compile it in many different flavors of .NET. But for anything that you're going to be doing as a component, it's pretty much always going to have that on the end of the class name. Again, if you do not have that at the end of the name of this declaration for the class, then Unity will not see this as a class for a component and you will have a bad time. So yeah, it's legacy in that case, Squawka. It is very much a legacy name. And you'll also notice it's got a UK spelling because Mono used UK spelling for their terminology. So you'll find, oh, you're going to have so much fun. You're going to have so much fun in coding because there's going to be such a mix and match of US and UK spellings of things. Colour without a U, mono behavior with a U. Oh, you're going to have so much fun remembering all of that. Luckily, autocomplete is here for you on Visual Studio. So if you type the letters COL, then it will give you the autocomplete of what the correct one should be. So yeah, you're going to have a fun time trying to deal with that issue. Sorry ahead of time. Okay, that's the class. And then these opening and closing curly braces, these tell us where the class starts and where the class ends. So once we've opened up, then we are talking about the contents of the class. And then when we have this closing brace here, that means we have finished talking about what is in the class. Then there are these two things here called void start and void update. Now, these are members of Podium because they're inside the Podium. They are methods, functions. I suppose you could also call them subroutines of Podium. And they have specific features, specific reasons for them being these names. Again, those that come from a strictly .NET C# oriented world coming into Unity, you're probably thinking, how the hell are these special names? Because these are private methods. Oh, Unity had done really weird things. So you don't do overrides of things from mono behavior. No. You just declare them as what the right name should be, and it magically hooks it up. So as long as you have the right name, it all works. So this one is void start. The void is the return type of the method, and with it being called void, that means we have no return type, so it doesn't care about returning anything. So void means nothing, means no return in this case. And start means, as it says here with this thing here called a comment, anything that starts with a double slash at the front and then turns into green text is a comment. So it doesn't actually affect the code. It's basically a comment on the code. As it says here, start is called before the first frame update. specifically on the first frame update of this podium object. All right, Asset, no worries. I know it is a bit of a long, drawn-out process. Hopefully you can catch up with the VOD later on. As always, if you've got any further queries on this later on, then Unity Workshop channel is going to be there for you. I'll be there helping out. Other people that have got some experience will also be able to help out you as well. Catch you later. So void start, that method will be called by Unity before you get the first actual update of the object. So start can be used to set things up for your podium. The other method here, void update, again void, no return, so it returns nothing. Update, as it says here by the comment, update is called once per frame. So for every frame of the game, this method will get called so that you can then do things with it. What we're going to do in the podium is we're going to set the name of the player. We're going to set the score of the player constantly. And we're going to maybe set the avatar of the player as well. We could probably do that as well. So, to do that, we need to add some member variables or fields to this class that we can then change on the Unity side of things. Because at the moment, we can't change anything about this on the Unity side. So, first thing we're going to do is add a couple of new lines here. It is always nice to have the variables at the top and then have your methods below. That just seems to be a standard that everyone seems to follow with Unity these days. Ain't no hello worlds here. No, not in Unity, surprisingly. Very surprisingly, not in Unity. No, we completely dodged the console.log quote hello world. I mean, you can make that be a plain name, absolutely. So, those that don't know the different types in programming, you've got integers, which in C# are shortened by name to the word int, although there are other type names out there that are more fully defined. So int is an integer number. We also have a floating point number, so a number with some number of decimal places at the end is a floating point number, and that is shortened to float. There is also a double wide precision float for bigger, smaller numbers, or more precision in the decimal side of things, and that's called a double. Then the other one that you probably need to worry about is text, and text is stored in a string literal, well, not string literal, in a string variable, and that uses the type name called string. Is pretzel okay? Pretzel is okay. So those are the ones you'll probably encounter the most for the time being. So, I feel like it's general practice, best practice though, I've gone off script. I mean, a hello world always is good to get to know how a language works in the first case, but Unity is very special in that. It's a component object-based system, not a standard linear programming style. Anyway, we're going to add a name field. So, first of all, we're going to make it public so that everything can access it. So make it public, because if it isn't public, then nothing else can access it, including Unity. Again, hand waving here. Space. Then we're going to make this a string. So type the word string to say that we want to have some text stored in this. So public string, space. And then this is the name of the variable or field. So I'm going to call this player name. Like that. And then I'm ending the line, which means I need to add a semicolon. So that is a full line. And if I save that by using Control S and then go back to Unity and let it do a recompile. Just doing a refresh. There we go. And then I reselect Podium Blue. Then, magically, we now have a new field here called player name. And now, M. Clemson, there is a reason for that. There are specific ways of naming things, because if you name it like this, with a sort of a capital letter at the beginning of each word together, then Unity helpfully splits them out word by word for you in the name on the Unity side of things. You can do things like that if you know things like M and M underscore. You can do things like this, and it will also correct for that matter, I believe. So let it do its thing. It does correct for that as well. So you can also do this kind of stuff if you're used to more Hungarian style naming. I think you can even do this as well. If I just let that recompile as well. Yep, you can do that as well, and it also spaces that out properly. I don't know how well it does with underscores in the name, though. Let's see how it does with that, because I don't tend to do this. But yes, it does do that. It's a very nice thing if you name it properly. No, so underscores, it does not split on the variable name. So I tend to do this for public fields because those that come from a traditional C#.NET experience outside of Unity would think, why the hell am I declaring a public field? Because that, yeah, public fields tend to be frowned upon in the traditional world. Really, you should be doing a property like that. But if I were to do that as a property, just this is a side for those that know what properties are, you will notice that Unity doesn't know what properties are. There is a reason for that. It's because of serialization. It doesn't want to get into the whole debacle of how the hell to serialize a property properly. So properties do not appear in the component view in the inspector for Unity, whereas fields, which are just that, do appear. So fields are what you want to do to be able to provide some sort of input from the Unity side of things in the component, like that. And I could give this, whatever name I want, like that. And to run the game, you would use the play button at the top here. So hit play, and this will now go and run the game. But it doesn't do anything. Even though I've renamed this, it just doesn't do anything. That's because we've not hooked anything up yet. So although we have this variable called player name with just fit in Louis as the value, it doesn't do anything yet. So let's hook some of that up. So alongside a player name, we're also going to need a reference to that text mesh script. So what we need to do now is, should we do it that way or should we do it the other way? No, we're going to do it the other way. We're not going to get a reference in. We're going to do yes, we're going to do a reference. Because there's two text elements in there, it could get confusing. So what we will need to do, we need to include some extra things from TextMesh Pro. So at the top below the using Unity engine line, we need to add another using. And we'll do using TM Pro like that. Capital T, capital M, capital P, lowercase r-o, and then end of the line, we're done. We use a semicolon. Looks grey, looks like we're not using it at the moment. That's because we aren't using it yet. We're about to. So we're going to add another member field below public string player name. And there's going to be another public. So public space. And we're going to use TMP underscore text. That's the name of the class that's used for a TextMesh Pro text component. Looks a bit complicated, I know, in comparison to string, but that's what it is. But luckily, with Visual Studio, you do get this assistant come up that tells you the possible names. So you start typing TMP underscore and a T, and that basically takes you all the way. You hit enter, and that gets you all the way there. I mean, there are other ways. You could probably use this as just a text element. It probably does alias to that. But I've always done it with TMP underscore text to give me the full access to TMP. You've always used public TextMesh Pro UGUI. Oh, you're using UGUIs. Well, that's not what I've used. Yeah, I've not used that one, Ben. That is for world. So that one is going to be used more for world space stuff and the old Unity GUI system. This is the new UI system, and Unity are coming up with a new UI system soon as well. Just really really complicate matters. So there's UGUI, which is the old one. There's UI, which is the current new one. And then there will be a new UI one, which is UI Elements. Don't worry about that. Gloss over that. All you need to worry about is put using TM Pro at the top here, and then public TMP text, and then the name of it. So we're going to call this the player. No, not player text. We're going to call this the name text. So name text, and then we finish with the line semicolon. Then we're going to set it up so that we change the text of the name text. So inside of void start, which is called before the first frame update. So this is in your setup code, as it were. Name things is definitely always the hardest part. Very much lingo, very much so. So in the void start, in this line here on line 12 at the moment, we're going to do name text, which is, as I say, the text element that we're going to associate in a moment. Dot. Now, dot means we're going to be finding something inside of this class to call or change. So name text dot, and then we're going to look for a value called text. So text there is the string value that is actually the text that the that TMP Textures Pro element will use to render. So name text dot text, and then what we're going to do is equate that to, so make it equal to with an equal sign, and then put in player name. And because we're done with the line, put a semicolon. So what this does, it will now change name text dot text, so the text of the Textures Pro element, and we're going to change that to whatever we set in player name. So let's save that script. Always remember to save your script, otherwise it won't trigger it. It won't work unless you do save. So save. Let's go back to Unity. It's going to have a think because it's realized that there's a code change. We still have this. We now need to reference the name text element, because at the moment it's referenced to none. And if we were to run this now, in fact, let me just demonstrate it now. Let me run it so you can see what it does. It's not going to do it, and you're going to get this red line at the bottom here. So if we click that, it's going to highlight Podium Blue, which is the object that it's associated to. And it says this thing called null reference exception, object reference not set to an instance of an object. So what that means is we've not set something up right, and there's a null reference. Null in this case meaning no reference. So let's take it out of play mode, click the play button, and we finish with play mode. And then we go to name text, and we need to give it the name text. So drill down Podium Blue, find the name object, and we're going to drag from there, from the hierarchy, into that property of name text. Let go. And it says now that it's referenced to name, which is a TextMesh Pro UGUI. So it is that thing that you were talking about, Ben, but it's also got another name to it. So now that I have that referenced, if I clear out this console and I replay it, just press the play button, then, well, hey, if we look at that in the game view, it's now set the name. We go to the scene view, zoom in a bit, and it is exactly what we set, just like that. Now, what you also notice, if we were to change this name after the fact, Bob I am, it doesn't change it. That's because we put the code in start, which is only called on just before the first frame. If you wanted to have it change for every possible frame, then what we want to do is change it to be called from here. So we take this line and cut it with Control X, and then we can move it into the update with Control V for paste. So put it into the update instead of start, save, go back into Unity, and then run it again. And that looks right. And then if I was to change the player name value now at runtime, hello, I am a name. Then there you go. You can now change the name of the player from this Podium script. Just like that. And then you can do that at runtime now. And because we didn't do the rich text problems, then you can format the text in here with rich text tags. So there you go. That's how to do some very simple scripting. Let's get the score sorted as well. So what I'm going to do is add a new value. This time it's going to be an integer value. So let's do public int, just int for me an integer. And this is going to be the score of the player. So player score. And while we're at it, we're also going to declare another text element. So public tmp underscore text. And this is going to be the score text. Just like that. And then... no worries, M. Clemson. I'll still be going for another 50 minutes or so. But thank you for stopping by. And you'll be able to catch up on the rest of this on the VOD. And I'm hoping to do another one of these next Saturday as well. So thank you very much for tuning in. Thank you for the follow there, Sesco Panner. I didn't catch that earlier. Thank you for the follow nonetheless. And Blurry Pixels as well, that follow if I didn't catch that earlier. Thank you for tuning in. So let's update the score text. Now, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go score text dot text equals player score, end the line because I'm done with the line, and I'm going to hit save, and let's go to Unity. And it's giving me an error. It's saying cannot implicitly convert type int to string. Now, those that come from languages where typing is almost non-existent, things like JavaScript, where anything could be any type. C#'s not like that. Unfortunately, you do need to be very explicit with your typing. So, because this is expecting a string here, score text.text is a string, and because this is an int, those are two different types that are incompatible. So you're thinking, oh, well, that's it then. I can't do anything about that. Yes, you can. Luckily with C#, every object, and I repeat, every object has the ability to convert to string. May not have the ability to convert from a string to something else, but it does have the ability for anything to convert to string. And to do that, all we're going to do is convert player score, which is currently an integer. We're going to do dot, because we're doing something with it. And in fact, it's the first thing it's suggesting, and even with a star to say that it's probably one of the things you're going to use. So I'm going to go dot to string, open and close parentheses. Because this is a method, we are calling a method which will potentially have some parameters, but in this case, there are no parameters. So we just open and close parentheses like this. This is the method in total. Again, we end the line there. You can see that the red line has now disappeared, saying we're all okay. Hit save. Go back into Unity. Let it do its thing, and then we need to add in the other reference. So for the score text, we just need to select the score element, drag it, and drop it in like that. And then if we hit play, we can change the name of the player. I am now Ash, and I can change the score of the player. And because this is an integer value, we can't put any alphabet characters in. We can only put numeric values in. But we can only go as far as an integer can go. Now, this is a specific value. The int 32 max value, because it's an integer, it uses 32 bits to store the value. And in this case, that number you see before you is the maximum positive value that an integer can store as a regular int. Which is, you know, for a score purpose, is probably going to be plenty big enough. You know, we're talking about, what is it? 2,147,000,000. You know, it's enough. I don't think people are going to be earning 2 billion points on a game show. Now, for those that know that there are other types out there for bigger integers, as in longs, I am afraid to tell you, unless they've changed it in Unity 2020, let me quickly experiment. I don't think they do anymore. Don't think they do. But I'm just quickly experiment to see if they have changed it or not. Oh, though they have. They've finally done it. Holy crap. They finally added support for it. My God. For the longest time, they've never supported longs. Well, that's something I've learnt today. They do support longs, which are 64-bit integers, which mean you can go with ridiculously long numbers. In other languages, they are longs rather than longs. But yeah, you can go quite large with your number now. 2020 best version now. Oh, I don't know. Do I dare convert? That's the problem. Do I dare convert? So you don't need to worry. I mean, if you're considering really massive numbers, then you might want to use a long. But in most cases, you're just going to use an int. So use an int, and that'll be fine, and it can store it. Wow, that's something I didn't know it could do. So I'm certain before it did not support long numbers in its serialized data. That's the thing, all of these properties here are actually stored values, so when you save the scene and reload it, these values will return. Obviously you can change those at runtime anyway, but yeah, those are values that are serialized. Let me hit the save button while I'm thinking about it. Well, I've configured this podium up. I might as well configure the other podiums up as well. So what I'm going to do is select the other three podiums, podium green, white and red. And for each of them, I'm going to add in a podium. So I'm going to add a component, podium. And just like that, each one now has a new podium script on it. Unfortunately, they don't have their references, so I'm going to have to add those references manually now, but that won't take too long with only 3 podiums to do. So with podium green selected, let me drag the name object to the name text and score object to the score text object. Let me just do the same with podium white and red. Those of you thinking out there, oh, this possibly looks like a tedious thing if I've got lots of objects that are basically the same. Don't worry. Later down the lines, we'll talk about things called prefabs, which will speed this process up much more. But for now, you don't need to worry about them. Okay, so I've configured all 4 podiums now. I'm just going to default that plain name to an empty string again. Hit play. And there we go, we now have 4 podiums that we can configure with individual names at runtime. So we've got there Keith, we've got Whiskers, we've got Ash, and we have Bob. There we go. And I can give them all points if I want to as well. So, and in fact, I might even be able to select all of them in the hierarchy at the same time because they all share the same script, and I could give them all points at the same time. Look at that. Look at that. Still neighbours. Yep, still neighbours. So there you go. That's how you can quickly get a text element up and running with a number. And also with text. Shall we quickly configure it to do a avatar as well? I think we can quickly do that so that you know how that works. Again, we only need to do 2 variables for this. So this time we're going to add in... Now, we have to add another using for this because we're going to be using specifically UI things. So, below Unity Engine, we want to add in another using. Using Unity Engine, well, it seems like I'm repeating myself, but this time, dot UI. Not UI elements, that is a completely different thing. As I said, that's the new UI system, which we're not talking about here because it's still kind of experimental. We just want .ui and then end the line with semicolon. Then in the podium class below our player score and score text, we're going to add another set of variables here, public sprite, because that's what we want to change as a sprite for the image element. This is going to be the player sprite. And then the actual image node that we want to, the image component we need to change is a public image image. I guess just call it image. And I think this time round, all I want to do is change this at the start. Same with the name text as well, I think. We just change it at the start. So moving that line back up. So the name text will only get configured at the beginning, and same with the image. So image dot, so we're doing something on the image, sprite, so we're going to be changing the sprite of the image, and we want to set that to player sprite. Naming objects with class names. I know. It's nasty, I know. But it gets the... Alright. There you go. There you go. Oh, Whiskers has just jumped off and gone somewhere. So there you go. Player image. Then we've just changed it to that. And player image dot sprite is the player sprite. Hit the save button. And once that's all done, it's done. Beautiful. Cool. Then we need to do some more references. So player image is itself actually in this regard because no, it isn't. Sorry, no, it's the player object. Oh, be careful yourself. Podium green, player, drop that in. Podium white, player, drop that in. And podium red, player, drop that in. And then for the sprites, what we're going to do is configure them. So the first one is going to be Labradoodle. So the name is going to be dog. Second one is going to be Mrs. Yakka. So we're going to call that Mrs. Yakka. Third one we're going to have as Whiskers. Like that. And then the last one for podium red, we're going to change that to be box, because why not? And we're going to call that, not Bob, we're going to call it box. Hit save, and then hit play, and it should configure all those 4 podiums. There we go. Those 4 podiums there now are dog, Mrs. Yakka, Whiskers, and box. What a good example we have. What a great example we have. Now, obviously, that's fine and all, but I'm still having to kind of use the Unity editor to edit things at the moment. So let's quickly add it. We've got enough time to be able to add in a button to do things in the game world. So I'm going to stop there. Alpha Bill graphics not fine, absolutely. So we're going to go back on the podium blue, and what we're going to do is going to add in a new object. So we're going to go to UI, and we're going to add a button. Oh, button or button TextMesh Pro? We're going to do button TextMesh Pro because TextMesh Pro is better. And what we're going to do now then is, where should we put this? We'll put this at the bottom. So with the anchor presets open, hold Alt and Shift, and then click on the bottom stretch option to stretch the button to the bottom of the podium there. Yeah, we'll leave it like that for the time being. And yeah, we'll just leave it as that for the time being, I think. Maybe we can change the text in it though. So go into the text element inside of button, and we're going to say, we're going to call it add a point. Obviously not really that graceful a name, but it's going to be very descriptive of what we're going to do in a moment. Okay, then what we're going to do is we're going to go back to the podium script, and we're going to add a new method to it. So we're going to add something that can change something. So add a couple of new lines just to space things out, okay? And this is going to have to be public so that other things can access it. So public void, because we don't need it to return anything. And we're going to call it add a point. Just be nice and explicit in what it does. We're going to then open and close parentheses because we are declaring a method. So there will be a set of parameters, but we don't care about that. So we just do open and close parentheses to say, these are the parameters. I don't have any. It's saying there's a red line because we haven't finished declaring this method. So let's go down to the next line and open up the method. So we're having an open squiggly bracket to say that we're starting the declaration of the method, and also Visual Studio helpfully gives us a closing one as well. I don't like them being on the same line there, so I'm just going to hit return to put them on a new line, and then enter again, return to give us a new line inside. Now, add a point. What we want to do for this is we need to change the value of player score by giving it an additional 1. So what we need to do for that then is we go player score, because that's what we want to change, equals. We're going to make it equal to whatever we're going to say in a moment. We're then going to say player score, because that's what it is to start with. And then we're going to add 1 to it. And because we're now done with the line, semicolon, as always. So what this statement means is we are going to set player score with whatever value it did have, but with 1 more on the end. So if player score is 0, then it will add 1 to that to make it 1. If I hit save, not much is going to happen because nothing is calling that method yet. However, with that button, we can make it call something. So if we now click on the button, come down to here where it says on click. Now on click is an event that will be fired off when you click the button. Seems pretty sensible. So what we can do is add some things that get called when you do that. So let's click the plus button to add a new event call. This is the most obvious way. I can give you another optimization in a moment, and actually 2 different ways of doing it extra. What we're going to do then is, this section here is asking for what object we want to talk to. We want to talk to Podium Blue in this case, so let's select Podium Blue and drop it in here. So we're talking to Podium Blue. Now it's going to populate the possible set of functions that we can call. Now, from the looks of things, it knows about Podium, so let's go to Podium, and then let's go to add a point. That's the method we called, we said, so let's call add a point. And then if I just save Unity scene and then hit play, okay, dog is currently there with 0 points, but if I click the add a point button, I now get a point. And if I add a point again, I get another point. And I keep going like this, point, 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 point. I can just keep getting points. Look at that. I'm accruing loads of points now. It's amazing. He's such a good boy. He gets all the points, absolutely. So that's a nice simple way of getting a button to do a thing. Now, button events can actually... No, actually, I'll do it a different way first. So there is another way that you can change this. So this is... It's a quite verbose way of doing it. It's very sensible for beginners to understand how that works. You can also write this like this. These are the same thing in essence. What this double plus at the end means is basically to add 1 to this value, and that's it. Now, there are some extra bits in there as to whether you do, because you can also do that as well. That's another thing you can do. You can do plus plus player score to increment the player score value by 1. But that you only need to really worry about in the case of whether you want what value you want returned from it, because this can actually return something. If I wanted to get this a returned value, then you can do returned value equals, and this will return a value, but where you place this actually matters, because this is a prefix incrementer, which means you'll get the return value of it after it got incremented, whereas this is a postfix a postfix operation, which means you'll get the return value of what this was before it got incremented. It's a bit disgusting, I know, but those are options available to you. You can also, as Pop Ramen Comedy say, you can also do this, which means player score wants to be assigned to the value of 1 more than it. So it's an increment by 1 and assigned back. That is also perfectly valid as well. So you can do that. Player score plus plus, plus plus, player score, and that. However, there is another thing you can do with button events, and that is it can support up to 1 parameter passed through. I know it sounds a bit weird that it only supports up to 1. I would really like it to be able to support more than just 1, but it can only support 1 at the moment. So what I'm actually going to do is, I'm going to rename this. I'm going to call it add points. I'm going to delete the content as well for the time being. So we're going to be add points, and we're going to have a parameter. And our parameter into this that we want to change is going to be int points. Points to add. Let's make it really explicit. Points to add. Okay, so then what we can do with this, now that we've declared a parameter called points to add, is we can now go player score, which is the score that we want to change. And we can go equals player score plus points to add, so that we can change what this amount is rather than just having to be the same number. And as before, we can also declare that as player score plus equals points to add. Both of those are the same thing. So you can either go fully explicit equal to itself plus that, or you can do plus equals this incremental value. Yeah, multivariable would be so much nicer to do, but at the moment, as far as I'm aware, unless they've changed that in Unity 2020, they still only support one variable pass-through. Now that we've changed the name of the method and also that there is an additional parameter pass-through, it's going to go, what have you done? I don't know what add a point is anymore. That's fine. We just go back in, click on Podium, and click on Add Points. Like that, and it gives you this extra field now, which tells you the number of points that you will pass through. So let's change that to 10. Means now this add a point text is wrong. I now need to change that to say add 10 points. Podium add points 10. If I hit the play button now, and I hit the add 10 points button, it adds 10 points, just like that. All the points. So nice and simple there. We can do that. We can also do it from keyboard shortcuts as well, rather than just button presses on the screen. So if you're interested in keyboard shortcuts, then we can do that as well. So I know that a few people with PowerPoint tend to use keyboard shortcuts for things. So I can quickly do something with that. Let's quickly do that. No. Yes, no, maybe? Can you repeat the question? Maybe. Yes, because I can do that for different players so that it's not based off of the button. Okay, so what we're going to do is going to have a different keyboard shortcut for different players so that we're not changing all of the podiums at the same time, because they all share the same podium script. So what we're going to add is another field to declare what key we want to talk about. So we're going to go public. I believe it's key code is what we need. And we're going to call this the score add key. So we'll be declaring something called a key code, which declares things like the letter, the key, the A key, the B key, C key, etc. on the keyboard, and we'll call the variable name score add key. Now, what we need to do in update is we need to check the input system for the key code being pressed. So let's create some new lines, and we're going to add in a conditional statement. So this is I will only do this next bit of code if it meets the criteria I'm about to talk about. So if you go if, and then open parentheses. So inside these parentheses will be the conditions we're talking about for this if. So if we go input, which is the name of the class in Unity that talks about the entire input system, dot, because we're talking to the class, and if we go get key down, that will be true when the button, when the key is first pressed down. There is a distinct difference between get key and get key down. Get key just tells you whether, tells you if the button is down at the moment, which could be, if you're holding the key down, it will keep returning as a truth statement for all those frames where it is down, whereas get key down is only on the first frame of it going down. So it is for that nice initial key press. So if input.getKeyDown, open the parentheses, and we give it the score add key field that we have declared at the top there, close parentheses. So that's our condition. If input.getKeyDown score add key, and this returns what is known as a Boolean value. Boolean is just true or false. And what the if condition is looking for in here is for something that returns a true or false statement. Once it's found that, then it's happy. It's still red because, as it says there, add braces to the if statement. It's still looking for something inside of the if statement to do if it meets that criteria. So if input get key down, score a key. So if we press the key that we associate in a moment, then open and close some squiggly brackets to tell us what to do. So in this section here, this will only get called if this condition is met. If it isn't met, then it just skips over and we just move straight on. But if it is met, then we can then go, let's go, we'll just increment the score by 1. So we go player score plus equals 1, which is, is basically that form, but you can also do player score equals player score plus 1. Either of those will work. And always remember to put in the semicolon at the end because we have finished the line. So if we press that button for that player, then we get some more points. Now we need to associate those buttons. So let's quickly do that. So podium blue, the score add key for podium blue is going to be, let's make it, do I want to do the F keys or do I want to use the number keys? Let's do, I could use the QWERTY keys, couldn't I? So if I do that and pick Q, I said Q, let's go with Q. So Q, green, score add key, you can use the W key. White, can use the E key. I'm just using the letter E to search for the appropriate key in the list. It makes it a little quicker because the list is quite long. And the last one we're going to have is R. Find the R key. There it is. So then if I play the game now, I can, if I wanted to, add 10 points just to dog with that special button that we implemented, or if I want to add an individual point to dog, I can hit the Q key like that, or if I want to do it to Whiskers, I can press the E key, or to Mrs. Yaka, I can do the W key, or Box, I can do the R key, just like that. And that is just for the initial press. So I'm holding down the R key now, just like that, and it's still only doing it for that one time. If I change that to read as input.getKey instead, so let's just change that as an example. So input.getKey, let it recompile everything, and then press play. You'll find that when you then press one of the keys, like I'm going to do R again, it's going to add 1 for every frame. So for however long I hold it, it's going to keep adding 1 each time. So it might not be what you want, but maybe in some cases it is. So entirely your decision. And always you can just change that value back to 0 in the component here on the right. So that's how you can get input buttons to work as well. If you want it to be like a set of keys together, like a Control Shift F1 kind of situation, then all you do is just add more input get key downs in one statement, I believe. Is that all you need to do? Possibly, yeah. Yeah, you basically have to add in all of the extra statements in one go. Although input.getKeyDown, again, only returns true on the first frame, so you've got to be a bit careful with that. Those ones you probably will have to do input.getKey, because you might not press all 3 keys at the same time on the same frame. But you can just chain more statements together for those that know how to do extra conditions in the if statement. Okay, does that make sense to everyone? I think that makes sense to everyone. Obviously it's a bit sort of slapdash because we're I've added just a button here, but then added a keyboard shortcut for all of them. I hope that makes sense. Okay. Okay, I think that's the last thing I want to talk about. Or do I want to do one more thing? I'll do an animator. Let's quickly animate some stuff. Why not? Because animations are always fun. So, I'm going to ignore the podiums for the time being, because we're just going to do a quick example of this. So, let's add a new UI image. Why not? Let's do an image. And let's give it a whiskers. And let's make it 300 by 300 or something. And just move it over there. Okay, so we've got a whiskers. And we can create some animations for this. So, if we go to Window, Animation, it creates this new animation window, and I tend to like to pop it down here because it kind of fits well in this flow. So just take that window that you get and then just drop it down to there. By the way, if you ever get into a situation where your layout gets really messed up and you can't fix it, then go up to the top right where it says layout, drop down, and then just click default, and that takes you back to where you were initially to start with, and then you can start messing around from there again. Okay, so you've got the animation window open, and it says to begin animating image. Actually, let's rename that as a let's call it moving cat. So to begin animating moving cat, create an animator and an animation clip. So let's hit the create button. And it's going to ask us to create a new animation. So we're going to call this let's call this a fly in. Let's call it fly in. And it's done that and created that. And it's also added a new component to the image called an animator. And it's associated this controller called moving cat. And this animation timeline is now in the fly in animation, as you can see here. So now we can start animating things. You can manually add some properties to change in here, but it's a bit messy. What Unity is quite nice in doing is that you can just record changes. So hit the record button and you'll see this timeline going red. And you'll see this record button here on the animation tab as well. That means we are now in live recording mode. So whatever we do now in this with this object, it will remember that for the current time that we are at on the timeline. So currently we are at frame 0 on our timeline. So I'm going to move Whiskers off screen. So it's now added a new timeline, new key with the position with Whiskers now over there. If we now move into 1 second, because this is a total, I think it's in 60 frames per second mode, and it says here 1:00, which means we're on second 1, frame 0. So we go to there, and then let me move Whiskers to there. And it's recorded that position and added a new keyframe. Now we can just scrub through the timeline, just like this, just holding on the left mouse button on the timeline bit, and we can just sort of scrub through and see what it's done. And it's basically done a tween of the position from off screen to on screen, like that. And we can add some more keyframes, so we can even add a keyframe in the middle. So let's move the timeline back to there, and let's say actually I want Whiskers to be over there. So now we can see the timeline like that, and again it's added a new tween between. It's easy. It does easing automatically, yes, Buzzer Bob. Now, if you want to have more control with easing, there are some basic options you have here. So on each keyframe, you should be able to. Oh, because this is a general key. You may have to drill this key down. So drop this key down, and you'll see these positions. Where is it? Have they changed it again? They've changed it again. You used to be able to, I'm sure, change the type of easing on these elements here, but you can't anymore. Okay, so what you're going to have to do to change the easing is go into the curves moment. Does it maybe? No, it doesn't change when you're not in recording mode. But what you can do is you can go into the curves, And remember F from before? Well, it works here as well. So press F to focus on the curves, and now you can see the actual curves that it's using to animate with. So what you can do is edit these individual points. So let's say now I want to change this point here to be a... It's currently using clamped auto, but you can also use flat, broken, free, smooth. It had all sorts of different weightings, and you can just sort of mess around with the curves to see how you want it to. So I could change this anchor point so it could slide, basically do an ease out. So it goes vroom, slow down, and then go that way. And that's just for that axis. That's just for the x-axis line there. That red line is x, and the green line is y. And you can just sort of tweak the curves as you need to, tweak the handles as you want. You can also break the tangents to do different things as well. So the left tangent can be a linear tangent, or you can have the left tangent be a weighted tangent. So you can change them to be weighted as well, so they're more like Bezier curves rather than just auto smoothing. You just need to play around with. Then constant there is just as a fixed change. So all sorts of changes you can do here, and all sorts of things you can play around with. Change it back to free smooth, back to where it was, and yeah, you just sort of play around with it. Oh, hello, Grandpa. Text-to-speech is doing its thing, I guess.
Just a quick stop by since I'm running my Tame Taskmaster RN, but thanks
quick
a
stop
ton
by
for
since
doing
I'm
this
running
and
my
can't wait
Tame
to check the
Taskmaster
VOD.
right now. But thanks a ton for doing this, and can't wait to check the VOD. Cool. Well, hopefully it all will make sense for you on the VOD. I will recap at the end of the VOD what we've done as well. Oh, thank you. No, I've already said Seska Panera as a follow there. But yes, you can mess around with the curves here as you need to, and then just sort of preview it. And then once you're ready to sort of play it back, take it off of record mode, press the play button, and then you get to see it all happen in real time. And you don't have to animate just the position. You can obviously rotate the scale as well. So let me change the scale to -1. Which, if we go back to the curves, it actually adds a default value at the beginning of what it was, of 1. But you can delete the key if you don't want it, so we get rid of that first key, so it's still at -1. And then here, we switch it to scale of 1, do all sorts of stuff. So like that, flip, flip, do some rotations. Yeah, why not? Let's do some rotations as well. Let's do rotate, and have it rotate into that. Something like that. So you can do a rotation as well. Flump. There you go. All sorts of madness you can do with the animator. And this is the fly in animation, so we can just have it pause like that. Now, by default, every animation is a looping animation, and you might not want it to be looping animation. So go to the fly in object like this, select it in the assets, and then change the loop time mode to don't loop. Then when you actually get to see it happen in the game, it won't actually loop the animation anymore. So let's play it and see what it does. There we go, and it stops. If I had loop time back on, for example, like it was before, then you'll see it will just loop forever and just keep doing the same thing over and over and over again, like that. Which may be what you want, might not be what you want. So just do that again, take off the loop mode, just like that. Now, let's do a fly out option as well. And we can just basically use the same animation, but in reverse. So what you'll need to do first is actually open up a different animation window, very helpfully, not really helpfully, called the Animator window. So you've got an animation window for all 3 animations individually, and you also have an animator or animator window for authoring all of the animations for a specific element. So if you select that and then select the element that we've got an animation for, called moving cat, then we have this state tree. For those that understand what state trees are, it allows you to transition from any animation state to another animation state using these transitions. So by default, on starting, on entering, it goes into the fly in animation, and that's all it does. Now what we can do, as I say, we can just use the same animation but in reverse for a fly out. So we go to this state here. We go to duplicate it by saying Control D or going Edit, Duplicate, and it creates a new one. We're going to call this fly out because that's quite nice to do. So call it fly out. And then all we do is it still uses the fly in motion, but we're just going to do the speed of -1. So it does it in reverse. Now, by default, it's not going to do the animation because there's no transition to it in any way. So it's just going to sit there as an orphaned animation. But what we can do is we can add in some parameters to the animator to make it trigger to do different animation things. So let's say we have a simple Boolean flag to say whether the cat is in or not. So what we can do is go to the plus button and go to bool, because it's a Boolean state. So go for bool, and we're going to call it, just call it in. Just a nice simple name of in. And by default, it's off. So what we can do is say by default it's on. And then we can create some transitions between these two states. So from fly in to fly out, we want to create a transition. So right click on fly in, click on make transition, and transition, it creates this new dangly line. Hover over fly out and left click it to select it. And we'll also want to create a transition back the other way as well. So right click on fly out, make transition, and go back the other way to fly in. Now at the moment, there's no conditions on these transitions, so they're just going to trigger. They're both going to trigger at some point. So here, by default, it transitions near the end of the animation and it'll go to fly out, which is probably not what we want to do. What we want to do is have it conditional based off of this parameter here, this in. So what we can do is change condition to say, well, it's actually given the default as what we need, apart from the value. It's given the correct parameter called in because that's the only one we have. Cool, will do, Ben. I'm wrapping up my animation stuff. This is just a quick cursory glancing animation. We won't look at scripting for it yet, but this is the animation just to start with. But the condition we want here to go from in to out is actually we want in to be false. So that's that condition. And if we select the other transition, going back the other way, and we set the condition for that, this time it is completely correct. We want to check the parameter of in and check it if it's true, then we transition back. So if we have those, hit the save for the scene, then if we press play, to start with, it will do a fly in, like that, and it will sit on fly in until we change the animator state. Now, we do need to have moving cat selected so that we're looking at the right animation information. I'm also going to pop this out so that you can actually see what's going on while we're happening, otherwise you're not going to be able to see it. So I'm going to pop that out, and I'm going to change this parameter, and hopefully what you'll see is Whiskers will do the fly in animation but backwards, and you'll also see on this animator that you'll see this line go blue, and then we'll go to here with a blue line to say that we've transitioned through this to this animation and now we're in this state. Hopefully. There we go. Just like that. We've transitioned from fly in to fly out. Now if we want to transition back the other way, well, we're currently sitting in fly out, and if we tick the in, then we transition back the other way. So now we have a simple parameter where this parameter is very easily controlled from a script to be able to change from state to state, and we just have that be programmatically controlled to fly in or fly out or do whatever you want. You can add as many animations you want into this animation state machine, and have different transitions do different things based off of different parameters. It doesn't have to be a Boolean. It can also be, I can't edit it in play mode at the moment, but you can also have it based off of a integer value, based off of a floating value. You can also have it based off of a trigger, which is just, I want to trigger this thing happening and it will do the thing. That's a very, 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 very basic look at animations. Ideally, I would have had a more pertinent use case for this. I think the pertinent use case would be to change the podium to flash or something. But at the moment, I'm running out of time, so not enough time to do that. I think the next time round we get around to this stream, which will be hopefully next Saturday, we'll use animators to make the podiums pulse, to say that they have buzzed in or not, and then make them do things, either pulse or whatever. Maybe even have this timer bar do things. I don't know. but we can do something with that with the animator. So you can see how it works and how it interacts with the scripts. So I think that is going to be it for me. Thank you very much for bearing with me throughout all of this. Hopefully it's been some useful information. Not been much scripting, but certainly I hope it's enough for you to get a grip of how the Unity UI system works at a fundamental level. We covered how to create a canvas, how to add a background image, how ordering of the UI elements matters, how to set up an image, how to do line slicing so you can do these sort of box images where they automatically do the bordering correctly for you. We also looked at aspect ratios. We looked at how to do rotations, how pivots work in the Unity UI system. We looked at TextMesh Pro and how to add in text elements into the game. We looked at some very basic scripting on how to change values for things from your own component into components that are visible on the screen. We looked at how buttons work very basically. It was a very quick button. We also looked very quickly on how input buttons work as well on the keyboard, which I actually wasn't expected to do, but I thought actually was quite a quick thing to add in as a quick test. So all of that, some basic types in C#, basic script, how the script is structured, and very basic animator as well for the moving cat, for animating in and out. We will do some more with the animations on the next stream and hopefully get more involved with the panel quiz attack thing where we have the 25 panels, which will then be able to demonstrate how a grid layout works, how to have things change colours based off of what you have selected, and yeah, just things like that basically. So, and maybe even doing some special maths on auto-calculating the score for you based off of what is selected in the grid. That would be quite nice, wouldn't it? So look forward to that next Saturday. Thank you very much. I hope you all had fun with it. Do have fun with just trying your own thing out. Don't have to follow my tutorial completely explicitly. If you have any problems, as always, go to my Discord. There'll be some more information, some people to help out with you. If you have a different version of Unity, things like that. If you've got some weird oddities that we didn't expect to have happen in the tutorial, anything like that, just give us a message on there and someone will be able to help out. I'll definitely be looking out in future. But that's going to be it. Whew, that's been a long stream, hasn't it? 3 hours and 52 minutes. But actually, it didn't feel like it was that long. It definitely felt like we were making progress, even if it was slow. And if you've got any specific things that you want me to talk about in next stream as well, like anything that I may have missed in this particular stream and you thought I probably should have talked about, or anything that you're curious about after seeing all of this, then let me know, and I'll see what I can do at the beginning of the next stream to see if that helps. Went quick, although this is still going over my head. Thanks for it. It probably will go over your head, but as I say, there will be a VOD for it later on, so you'll be able to maybe digest it with some playing and pausing to help out. It's more fast-paced than most tech walkthroughs you have at work. That's probably true, yes. So yeah, I'm hoping to get some more out of this next week, and we'll probably get more into the meat of making it a proper presentation for a game show. So that's going to be it. Thank you very much. We're going to go and raid Royal Flush now, who's doing some Google that. And I'm going to get myself some food because I'm hungry. I'm hungry, I am. Now considering whether I bump my FPuxVR project to use Unity as well as HTML, Python and WebSockets. It's complicated. Always fun just overcomplicating things. Don't do feature creep, Tantasar. Don't do feature creep. It's never fun. So that's going to be it for me. Thank you very much. I'll be back again next Saturday, hopefully at 4 p.m. I will have other streams in the week. I know. I don't know what I'm going to be doing. There'll probably be some outright at some point unless I run out of outright questions. Anyway, I'm waffling. You know exactly what features you want. All right, well, it's not feature creep then. Just you're probably going to have a while doing it. But I can at least maybe give you some help with WebSockets with Unity though, because I had to do that without Write. So I could definitely do that and help out with that, especially with making it support WebGL, which is a little bit of a complication because you have to do the JavaScript jump. All right, thank you very much. Catch you all later. See ya. Bye.